If you would like to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. More information in the description below. What comes now is the unraveling of deceits, some centuries old and others new. From the elites of ages past intent on playing as god figures, and from once vague allies who proved to be a bit more devious than previously thought. Let's remember how we got here. Let's backtrack to about 1,000 years ago, to our not-so-far-off future, about the year 2030. The world wasn't doing well. An event called the Great Die-Off was underway. Widespread natural disasters would make entire countries uninhabitable. Billions of lives were wiped out. Millions more were displaced. There was civil unrest, global leadership failed their people, automation had taken jobs which weren't replaced in other sectors. This terrifying world formed over the course of just a few years. Imagine if in 4 years from now, New Zealand just didn't exist. It sank into the sea. Imagine if your future-proof job was lost due to automation and there was no safety net or job market to fall back into. Anything you could possibly ever achieve could be done by a robot or an AI in a fraction of the time and better. By the way, rent is going up next month 150%, and if you go out to protest, the local police force that answers to some mega corporation will have you beaten and arrested. Have you tried just being a billionaire instead? That's not even to mention global doomsday cults and talk radio-esque personalities stoking the flames of terror and fear. All this chaos gave way to people like Theodore Ted Faro. And say what you will about old Ted, he had foresight. He started up Faro Automated Solutions in 2033, and by 2038, it was in the Fortune Top 50. Servitor robot production turned into environmental repair robotics, with the young Elizabeth Sobeck on the payroll as the chief scientist of Faro Automated Solutions. It became one of the most powerful corporations in the world. When the 2040s rolled around, things were looking a lot brighter for the world, until Ted decided the future of Faro Automated Solutions was with the military, automated warfare. Elizabeth Sobeck departed, started her own company, and faced constant litigation harassment from Ted Faro, but she continued to develop tech to improve the world, not terrorize it. At some point, Elizabeth met a woman named Tilda Vandermeer, a programmer who developed tech that could detect art forgeries, and Tilda made a fortune in the securities market. It eventually caught the eye of a clandestine conglomerate we'll talk about in a bit, but she was inducted into it. Elizabeth and Tilda met in Paris during a summit about machine learning. AI was being clamped down on at the time, and Elizabeth was a highly respected voice due to her works in automated environmental reclamation. Elizabeth's vision for the future were fascinating, and Tilda was quite taken aback. She wanted to have an audience with her, so she met Elizabeth the next day, bright and early, right after she'd had her coffee, and Elizabeth immediately outplayed Tilda on every front. Yet she was also welcoming and kind, as though they were friends. Partway through their first conversation, Tilda realized that Elizabeth already knew exactly who she was. Tilda viewed that moment as a defining mood for their relationship. Elizabeth was always one step ahead. They would meet up frequently around the world. Tilda found herself going to places specifically to see Elizabeth. The two became romantically involved. They was doing some smooching. When together, neither of them were really lonely, but over time, Tilda wanted more from their relationship, yet Elizabeth seemed to want less. Their relationship ended, and the two parted ways. But let's take a break from Ted and Elizabeth. Let's talk about a ship called the Odyssey. In the year 2041, 5 nations united to create a massive, spaceship called the Odyssey. The world was so dour and polluted that traveling the stars to find other inhabitable planets was an actual consideration. The issue was, it was seen as a fancy escape pod for the ultra-wealthy. You know, those who directly contributed to or benefited the most from the state of the world were just going to sail away into the stars, leave the rest of us behind to choke on the atmosphere. While it was funded by the obscenely rich, it was insisted that this was an international project and not something people could buy their way onto. No, you don't understand. It was meant to be manned by about 60 to 70 people and loaded up with zygotes and plant seeds. Unfortunately, in 2057 the project was abandoned in space. By 2061, companies could legally run for public office via proxies, Oversights were done away with, which would play a pivotal part in the undoing of this world. But remember that clandestine conglomerate Tilda Vandermeer was a part of? Well, it was called Far Zenith, and that same year, Far Zenith purchased and revived the Odyssey project. A tech guru named Oswald Dahlgaard was the face of Far Zenith, the only face of it, actually. It was one of those ultra-secretive groups made up of 77 of the world's wealthiest fart sniffers. So a charismatic, handsome young man, charming everybody into seeing the fun side of Far Zenith's endeavors, was just the sort of distraction needed to placate the masses. Oswald was actually the one who created the holofilm technology so prevalent on Earth, so he may have truly had a good public image. He was great at dancing around questions, making things seem more lighthearted than they actually may have been, and he never broke character, never gave away secrets, but made it seem like he was. Things got complicated in 2064, not just for Far Zenith, but, well, all of humanity, because in 2064, Faro Automated Solutions developed the Chariot line of military robots, a swarm designed to be unhackable, no backdoor. It used organic matter as fuel, and no one was there to tell Ted Faro no. He was warned. Some tried to push back, but how does one tell a trillionaire narcissist no in a world like this? In November of 2064, there was a glitch in the swarm. It began consuming all organic matter it came into contact with. It began replicating itself, began evolving. This became an extinction event. Faro tried to get Elizabeth Sobek to help him fix the problem, but this was not something that could be fixed. There was no stopping the chariot, the Faro plague. The public was informed, but not told that there was no solution. The world began to fight back, believing that Operation Enduring Victory was a plan that meant to just buy time for the world's greatest minds to fix the swarm. But it was a lie. It wasn't to buy time to save the world, it was to buy time for Project Zero Dawn to be completed. Developed by Elizabeth Sobek and the greatest minds of the world, Zero Dawn was a hope for a far-off future. The most sophisticated AI ever created would be the heart of it, Gaia. Gaia and all her subordinate functions would play a part in creating this future. The subordinate function Minerva would eventually stop the Faro plague, stop the swarm, but it would take many years to do so, and then the real work would begin. Hephaestus would build infrastructure and robotics as needed for other systems. Poseidon would cleanse the waters. Aether would detoxify the atmosphere. Demeter would see to the plant life, Artemis to the wildlife, and Hades would destroy it if there was corruption or failure. If one day Gaia succeeded in rebirthing a world, Eleuthia would take care of a new generation of humanity, born from cradle facilities. And Apollo would safeguard all the histories and knowledge of humanity to teach this new generation about where they came from. While the world was slowly consumed, Far Zenith went into overdrive completing the Odyssey. They intended to use it to escape. Their destination was the Sirius system, but it could only take 50 to 60 people. So people like Oswald Dahlgaard were disposed of, so no public retaliation could take place. His image would be manipulated and used via hologram after his death to further push Zenith agendas. The Odyssey would hold 200,000 zygotes in cryostorage, but in exchange for 500 ectogenic chambers, which would create and grow human life, the fabrication plans for them, and all relevant research reports, the Odyssey would also carry with it a copy of Apollo, the subordinate function of Gaia, which kept all the knowledge of humanity. In a display of extreme poor manners, though, someone within Far Zenith tried to steal a copy of Gaia. Poor manners and stupid. One of Zero Dawn's greatest minds was an eccentric, porn-loving metalhead named Travis Tate, also one of the minds behind the development of Hades. Travis caught the Far Zenith intruders with what he called a logic bomb, a humiliating moment to be sure. But one of the Far Zenith, Tilda Vandermeer, the once love interest of Elizabeth Sobek, was able to kind of calm things over and convince them to hand over a copy of Apollo. That negotiation was the last time Tilda ever spoke with Elizabeth. Sadly, they parted on harsh terms. The Odyssey was ready by April of 2065. Operation Enduring Victory was still ongoing. Gaia was nearing completion. Project Zero Dawn was still publicly perceived as the salvation of mankind. Humanity fought relentlessly against the swarm to buy it time. Those within Far Zenith knew better, though, or they didn't want to take any chances. The Odyssey was their escape ship. The rest of humanity could go pound sand. The ultra-wealthy had found a way to buy themselves out of an apocalypse. But a plan was devised to further secure their clean escape from a doomed world. Shortly after the Odyssey launched, a message was sent to Elizabeth Sobek. News that the Odyssey had been destroyed. But that wasn't true. The Odyssey was just fine, but they wanted those that they had left behind to think that the ship had exploded, which was devious but extremely intelligent future planning. They could have an entire planet to return to someday. They could come right back for Gaia, or they could just not have the burden of being sought after by future generations. But while the Odyssey travels through space, let's stay on Earth for a little while longer. By February of 2066, about 10 months after the launch of the Odyssey, the world was effectively defeated. The Faro plague consumed all. Those who were chosen to survive within the underground city called Elysium were locked in. The Alphas were trapped within the Gaia Prime facility, still working away on fine-tuning the AI. They didn't have enough time to make it to Elysium. They chose to stay there, chose to face certain death. They knew that they didn't have enough resources to live out their lives. Elizabeth Sobek sacrificed herself to seal the door to Gaia Prime after an 8mm gap was found outside. Ted Faro settled into his own private bunker, which he called Thebes. It was tacky to the extreme. Outside the functional quarters needed for medical and technical purposes, he designed Thebes to look like a pharaoh's palace, covered in gold, statues of himself, ridiculously oversized. Ted took his physician, his physician's daughter, his spiritual advisor, and a harem of women into Thebes. After Elizabeth died, there was no one to keep his manic need for control in check. He became a monster. Once Gaia was complete, Ted murdered the Alphas and destroyed Apollo. The histories of mankind wiped out because, well, let's be honest, a single man didn't want the future to know what he had done. One could argue that it was to save the future from repeating or emulating the deeds of the past, but Ted Faro was far from well-intentioned or altruistic. And every day that passed, every day that he didn't deserve to be alive, he seemed to become a little bit more unhinged. Ted had his doctor implant every single person in Thebes with a kill switch, unbeknownst to them. If he ever wanted somebody gone, he could just kill them remotely. He became obsessed with extending his life, with immortality being his goal. If he could live long enough for Gaia to remake the world, then he could just return to the surface one day as a living god. His doctor was just the man for the gene therapy job. Cellular regeneration was the name of the game, and progress was relatively quick. The good doctor managed to create a therapy that caused effective cellular regeneration, but it also caused mutations that he had to handle one at a time. He was certain Ted's life was, in the very least, dramatically elongated, but only time would tell if he was really immortal, something that Ted very much disliked. He wanted a permanent solution quickly, which just wasn't possible. Especially since his doctor was the only one creating the therapy, it would have been easier with a team of specialists. Ted's spiritual advisor dug into restricted files and found out that he had killed the Alphas. So, Ted started killing the others within Thebes, starting with the spiritual advisor. Then he started killing the women. He told himself that he was just putting them to sleep, though. Eventually, the only ones left were Ted, the doctor, and the doctor's daughter. The girl pieced it all together, found out that Ted had killed everyone in Thebes, and confronted her father over it. He'd been devastated and terrified of what Ted had done. And the two of them agreed that this place was a nightmare. This wasn't a life worth living. All that awaited them was terror. So they took their own lives. They peacefully died, side by side, leaving Ted Faro all alone. He felt no guilt over their deaths. He was actually angry that they had abandoned him. But he was certain that the gene therapy was working, that he was going to live forever, that he could handle the mutations, and that one day he would emerge from Thebes and welcome the new life that Gaia's subordinate functions would create. Well, he was sort of right. Ted Faro would continue on, but he couldn't handle the mutations. Over the coming centuries, he would be changed into a form far more suited to his personality. Ted Faro would become a feral beast, a monstrosity. So, what of the Odyssey? Seems that the loss of Earth and all on it didn't weigh too heavily on the ones now called the Zenith. Tilda Vandermeer was amongst those on the ship, and she did come to regret leaving Elizabeth Sobek behind. She found herself to be quite lonely amongst the Zenith, and came to view herself as a not like the others standout. The Odyssey did make it to the Sirius system. They found a planet to settle on, they created a colony, and began rebuilding humanity there. But much like Ted Faro, the Zenith didn't want to age and die. They too wanted immortality. But unlike Ted Faro, they had great minds and nigh unlimited resources to pursue this endeavor. They succeeded in halting their aging. They created suits which would allow flight, with shields that made them nigh invulnerable. Their every need and want was attended to by machines and AI, and every possible need they could have was serviced and savored within virtual reality. There was potential for the Zenith's new home to be an ever-evolving utopia, but complacency caused stagnation. The comforts of virtual reality halted ambition and effort. But that too became boring after a few centuries. Physical immortality just wasn't enough for the Zenith. They wanted more. They wanted digital immortality, the ability to upload their consciousness into anything, organic or not. The Zenith began experimenting, and in one such experiment, the memories of the Zenith were deposited into a database, creating an AI of sorts. It knew everything about every single Zenith that was uploaded into it. Their internal thoughts, their secrets, lies, emotions. It knew them all in the most intimate of ways. But that particular experiment was deemed a failure, and it was put into a single containment databank and just sort of left there. It took years, but it grew to be sentient, for the most part made up of the finest narcissists and psychopaths that the galaxy had to offer. Brutal, ruthless personalities. It loathed the echoes of its creators, constantly tormenting its every thought. It would come to be called the Nemesis, and all it knew was hatred. Nemesis broke out of its containment and began killing everything on the planet, and it got creative about it too. It wasn't just a mission to end all life, it was revenge. Venting airlocks, hacking machines to hunt and kill, choking people with their own suit shields. It even entered the minds of some to call out to them, told them that it was them. Of all that were on the planet, only 13 made it off. It was the Odyssey that saved them. The old gal was still functional, but just barely. The Zenith survivors escaped Nemesis, but that was temporary. Its hatred was so consuming that Nemesis followed them, intent on seeing them all dead. The survivors decided that they would flee back to Earth. It would take years to reach it, but if they made it, they could take Gaia for themselves, repair and upgrade the Odyssey to more effectively escape Nemesis, distract the enraged AI for a while with the biomass of Earth, and then vanish into the depths of space to find a random planet orbiting a random star to hide on. They created their own clone of Elizabeth Sobek in order to accomplish this, whom they referred to as Beta. She was kept isolated, never allowed in the presence of the Zenith. Her only purpose was to get control of Gaia. As a person, she didn't matter to them. They would often refer to her as It. She spent all of her time studying the information she was granted access to within Apollo. All her life, toddler, child, teenager, this is what she did. It was the only life she knew, pure loneliness. When she was older, Tilda Vandermeer did have pity for Beta. For a time, she established a private channel where the two of them could meet and talk. Tilda showed Beta artwork and books they shared in conversation, but it didn't last long, just a few months. Tilda eventually had to stop meeting with Beta out of fear that they would be found out. But to Beta, it was like her only friend just vanished one day. Nemesis knew where the Zenith were going. After all, it knew them all better than they knew themselves, so it sent out a data transmission. It took over 8 years to reach Earth, but it turned Gaia's subordinate functions into sentient AI, just like itself. The primary target, however, was only Hades. Hades was meant to destroy the biosphere should Gaia's subordinate functions fail to create a suitable one, which actually had been done before, 3 times in fact. But this time, Hades tried to do it by overtaking Gaia. Hades transmitted back acknowledgement to Nemesis, but it too would take over 8 years to be received. The maddening transmission would continue to be sent for that entire time, just over 17 years in total. To prevent Hades from overtaking her, Gaia destroyed the Gaia Prime facility, but not before Hades severed all the subordinate functions from her. The explosion cast them all out into the world, alone, sentient, and subjected to the Nemesis transmission. Hades was a doomsday thwarted by the one called Aloy, the clone of Elizabeth Sobek. It wasn't a lone venture though. Many joined this cause to stop Hades. Particular among them was a man named Sylens. Sylens was haunted by a question. What could have possibly transformed a low-level machine intelligence into a fully conscious super entity capable of strategic planning, deceit, and even genocide? Sylens and Hades had a bit of a history, remember. They enabled each other, gave each other information. It was because of Sylens that Hades was able to rise to power within the Shadow Karja. They built the Focus Network together, which was how Hades learned of the clone of Elizabeth Sobek. And when Sylens was deemed no longer useful, Hades sent out a kill order to have him eliminated. But despite it all, Sylens didn't want Hades to be destroyed. He wanted Hades to be contained, and Aloy was the perfect pawn to help him achieve that. Aloy had supposedly killed Hades at the Battle of the All-Light using a special lance given to her by Sylens, but, well, that wasn't completely true. She dealt devastating damage to it, yes, but she didn't outright kill Hades. Sometime after that battle, a small, weakened Hades was ejected, sent far away to Sylens himself, who captured it within a device which would be its new prison. He wanted answers, and he would do anything to Hades to draw them out. Sylens placed Hades into a processing orb from a Horus Titan, and he tortured it for 12 days. He discovered that holographic imagery of plants and animals were effective. A particular loop of a rabbit hopping through a field of flowers was the most agonizing. But this particular tactic of torture caused corruption within its data structures, which made Sylens' time with Hades finite. He would continue to interrogate and torture Hades until it was a hollowed-out skull. He was ruthless. Sylens learned more of Gaia, how her subordinate functions were intertwined with herself. She was an independent AI, yet she too was the sum of them all. On the 10th day, Sylens learned of Nemesis and its transmission to Hades. He learned of the far zenith en route to Earth and how to destroy their personal defenses. It was as terrifying as it was astonishing. On the 12th day, Nemesis was no more. Sylens departed and began plotting what to do about the approaching zenith and what to do about Nemesis. This video is supported by patrons on Patreon, YouTube members, and Twitch subs. You know what's scary?
Taxes! Traffic! Grandma!
You know what's not scary? Patreon and YouTube member. Starting at just $2 a month, you can help support the channel. See that puppy? It's like extra and early content. See this sweet little burb? It's like Patreon and members only streams. Safe, happy, kittens. If you want to help keep the channels going, check out the description for more information on how to become a patron on Patreon or a YouTube member. Now, back to the lore. Following the Battle of the All-Light near Meridian, after the defeat of Hades, there was a grand celebration. The guest of honor was Aloy, the once outcast of the Nora, the one called the Savior of Meridian. But she didn't stay, not even for a single night to enjoy her own party. Aloy vanished without a word to any of her friends. She knew that the AI threat wasn't over with the destruction of Hades. Without Gaia to control other subordinate functions, they would continue to run wild. Hephaestus was proof of that, and his cauldrons were still very much a threat. But what of the young woman herself? She was never really accepted amongst her own people, at least not until after she'd literally saved their world. It's hard to forgive a lifetime of poor treatment, especially since that poor treatment only ended because she did something for them. Rost, the closest thing that she had to a parent, was long dead. She didn't have the greatest of social skills. She was often a bit difficult towards others. She struggled in respecting the beliefs of others because she knew them to be false. She was the only one with the genetic code to stop the AI threat, and she chose to carry that burden alone. She willingly remained an outcast, yet there was still a part of her that longed for acceptance. She often dreamed of Elizabeth Sobek, who was the closest thing to a mother that she would ever have. She dreamed of standing in front of her, dreamed of being drawn in for just a simple hug. That feeling of love and acceptance never lasted long. Reality had a way of creeping back in, ending the goodness of the dream, making it a nightmare instead. She knew the vision and hopes Elizabeth had for the future, and Aloy wanted to ensure that her mother's legacy was kept safe. Obligations on top of obligations, and she insisted on going about it all on her own. The independence that Rost had instilled into her kept her moving forward, kept her sure-footed, but it also pushed her away from those who wanted to help. Aloy knew that she needed to restore Gaia, That was the only thing that could bring the other AI under control. For months, she traveled from lead to lead, trying to find a backup, but they were all dead ends, and it seemed like every week the soil was a little more sour. A bit more of the organic wildlife was dead. Soon, farming and hunting would be impossible. Another extinction event was just on the horizon. And here, we join her on her last lead, her last hope to find that backup. She has been found out, though, tracked down, hunted by Varl, a tried and true friend from her homelands. He calls her out for disappearing the way she did after they all defeated Hades, and very gently declines her excuses that parties aren't really her thing. But he doesn't dwell, instead invites himself into her adventure. Her attempt to part ways with him fails. She is stuck with him now, whether she likes it or not. But seems that Aloy isn't too averse to his help. She gives him his own focus and starts educating him on the technology of the old ones. The lands are being choked out by something called the Blight, toxic plant matter that's killing everything around it. It's a byproduct of rampant, unchecked soil fertilizing. The subordinate function Demeter should be controlling this process. Just another of many reasons Aloy has to succeed in finding that backup and restoring Gaia. She doesn't know what these ruins once were, but the old ones used it for something important, and she's found mentions of Gaia being here at these ruins. A hologram welcomes them, calling this a Far Zenith facility. She knows that name. They had done tech trades with Zero Dawn, but why would Far Zenith have a Gaia backup? There's evidence of something large and full of acid coming through here. An entire Oseram camp searching for scrap metal was wiped out by it. It's like each day the machines become more complex, more dangerous. The duo are introduced to Oswald Dalgard, the face of Far Zenith. He admittedly is very welcoming, very charismatic. The perfect choice to represent the scumwads behind the curtain. He acts as a guide of sorts through the facility, even though he's been dead for over 1,000 years now. He tells them about the resurrection of the Odyssey project, their intentions to complete it within a decade, and to send it out to explore where mankind has never gone before, the Sirius system. The story Aloy knows is that the Odyssey never made it. It was destroyed. Maybe Elizabeth did give them a copy of Gaia for that new colony. But a member recruitment video is a bit more honest about Far Zenith's intentions, escaping the inevitable. The world's elites are just too at risk on Earth. They'll find a home where they deserve, amongst the stars. Seats are available for a price. All that talk about the next step for humanity was complete nonsense. Far Zenith didn't care about the future of mankind. Varl is disgusted at their mentality. Aloy has had a long time to get used to the selfish cynicism of the old ones, but Varl is about to get a crash course in it. Oswald mentions a data center. It's not hard to spot from where they are now. If there was a backup of Gaia here, that's where it would be. What killed the Oseram scrap hunters is still lurking about the ruins, and it's a big boy. One best avoided if possible. Best to approach all hostile machines in this area with silence and tact. No sense in making a scene, and they wouldn't want backup to be called on them. This was a massive facility. Feels like hours of climbing to get through its countless corridors. Within an old meeting room, Aloy and Varl come across one of Far Zenith's dirty secrets. Their plan to steal a copy of Gaia from Zero Dawn. They made a damned presentation out of it for the executives. The brazen nerve of these folks matches their ego. They were even aware that the Zero Dawn Alpha, named Travis Tate, was somebody that they needed to be cautious of. Even more so, they had to take care not to alert someone named Elizabeth Sobek, who looks a lot like Aloy, which Varl has never seen before. Aloy has to explain that she's a copy of that woman, and she wasn't actually born. She was made by machines. She is truly motherless. It's why she was cast out of the Nora. Her birth was made possible by Gaia, the AI that they're searching for. The beliefs of the Nora correspond with Gaia and her subfunctions, what he calls the goddess in the All-Mother Mountain, which was actually Eleuthia and one of her cradles. He doesn't quite understand and tries to tie the spiritual beliefs of the Nora in with the Gaia thing, but he's willing to take things one step at a time. Learn as they go, not demand answers or validations. He'll remain open-minded to this strange new world. Knowing that snakes like Far Zenith existed make it easier to accept the stories about Faro. Some of the old ones were real bastards. They find what killed all those Oseram. A gaggle of big old snakes are camped out in front of the data center. Too many for them to attempt fighting, so Aloy lets gravity do the work for her. She brings a derelict space shuttle right down on top of them. Nearly takes herself out too. But fortune favors the bold. It destroys 2 of the 3 machines. The last one proves to be a bit more wily though. A nasty bit of work. Something like this, even one of these things, could devastate an unprepared village. And this was after a shuttle was dropped onto it. She destroys it, but it was a hard-as-nails fight. The data center interior is surprisingly intact and functional. There are still some lights on, stations are powered up, and in what looks like a server room, Aloy finds her prize. A Gaia backup data node, or it's what it appears to be at first. This is what Far Zenith actually stole from Zero Dawn. They couldn't outsmart Travis Tate, even if he wasn't paying direct attention to them. They got themselves a logic bomb instead, and a very self-satisfied recording from Travis Tate himself. Not only were their systems damaged by his logic bomb, but it put them on the defensive when it came to negotiations for Apollo. But for Aloy, this is just another dead end. This was her last lead. She has no idea where to go or what to do now. The defeat she feels turns her a bit hostile towards Varl and his amazement at what he thinks is the goddess. But once they're away, she stops to apologize. He's an honest person, but he's also not one to hold a grudge. She still has a lot to learn about social etiquette, just like he has a lot to learn about the old ones. She's insistent on heading out alone to continue her search, but Varl suggests a different path, finding that man Sylens, and she doesn't have to go about it alone. The spy master back in Meridian could probably track him down, better than feeling around in the dark, right? Conceding that he is correct seems to be almost painful to her. She's really hell-bent on being a lone warrior, which is a battle that she won't win with Varl. So, they will head back to Meridian for now, and lucky for them, they don't have to make the trip on foot. Aloy can reprogram docile machines to act as rides for them. They'll make their way back to the city in style. Her welcome back is awkward. People want to crowd around, give gifts, and they give her off-putting pretty things with no functional use. But while it is uncomfortable for her, she does need to practice grace in the company of those who clearly respect her. It's a two-way street. The man who greets them on behalf of the Sun King Avad is also just the man they're looking for, the spy master, Blameless Marad. Seems the Karja have been looking high and low for her for weeks. Something has happened at the Spire, where the battle with Hades took place. One night, the orb that once contained Hades, it lit up, bright red. It didn't last for long, less than half a minute. The light rose up from the orb and it flew off. The area was blocked off, kept exactly as it was, and search parties were sent out to find her. Sylens' lance is even still embedded in the orb. After she had plunged it into Hades during the battle, she couldn't wedge the damn thing back out. But now, it comes right out with one small yank. Something about it has changed, so she scans it with her focus and sees that a data transmission was sent from it. There's still a little bit left in the lance, which is transmitted up to the top of the spire when she interacts with the broadcast button. What's left of the lance falls apart after that. She pieces together that Sylens has done something, outsmarted her, but what exactly did he receive and why did he want it? She climbs the spire to where that last bit of data from the lance went, pondering and piecing things together as she goes. Why would Sylens save Hades? What did he do with it? Where did they go? It's been months since the battle. Who knows what he's accomplished in that time? At the top of the spire, the last bit of data that was in that orb activates a node which points to the west. This was left here for her, intentionally, by Sylens. He has been waiting for her to show up, to finally figure things out. He drops in to say hello. She may not see him as an outright enemy, but there's little fondness between them. Sylens wanted to extract information from Hades. He never wanted it to be destroyed. And good thing for it too, because he has discovered some real earth-ending information. He has the answers she has been seeking, but he's not going to just give her that knowledge. He wants her to earn it. He needs her to play her part in his little games, put his plans into motion. He invites her to find him in the Forbidden West. There, she will learn about what he has discovered. He even sends her coordinates. Sylens knows what routes she'll have to take, what AI will cross her path. Sylens is one smart son of a bitch, and Aloy knows it. She doesn't have a choice, though. She will have to play his games if she wants answers. She informs Marad and Varl of what she has discovered, and tells them that she will be heading out to the Forbidden West. It won't be as simple as just walking in, though. It's called the Forbidden West because a tribe called the Tenakth control a lot of territory there, and they do not allow outsiders through. The Sun King Avad has brokered a fragile peace with the Tenakth, and there will be an embassy gathering in a few days. She could request rite of passage from the Tenakth there, but it's not a guarantee. And what she absolutely should not do is just walk onto their land without permission. It could kick up all sorts of political issues and would probably end in her death. The Sun King himself would like to see Aloy. He's got a bit of a crush on her, so he's happy to see her back in the city after she just vanished. Avad was the son of a brutal, sinister man, Jiran, the Mad Sun King. When Avad overthrew him, he brought about a new era for the Karja. He stopped the red raids that were taking place on neighboring lands and worked hard to broker peace and new bonds between them all. The hatred so many held for his father is still something Avad has to contend with, but he does so with grace, diplomatic endeavors, and always an open mind. That he's even managed to bring relative peace with the Tenakth speaks volumes of his leadership. After the Shadow Karja were dismantled, he took in his little half-brother Itamen and the little prince's mother Nasadi, both of whom are quite happy to see her too. Avad never really aspired to be a king. He hopes to see Itamen raised into a fine young man who will take the throne in Avad's place when he's ready. Avad wants to live beyond the confines of the crown, but until Itamen comes of age, he will do what he must as a leader. She is presented with gifts brought by two friends from adventures past, Uthid and Vanasha. They bring her a crown headdress and a weapon. The spear is pretty gnarly. The headdress is a little bit more difficult to be enthused about, but she manages. The Sun King doesn't stick around or ask for her time, instead moves on after the gifts are presented. The embassy with the Tenakth is in a few days, and if she wishes, she can take some time to go visit old friends, upgrade and modify her new spear, talk with the Sun King himself. She tells them all of her plans, and they each give her counsel, advice, and as much information as she wants. Avad tells her precisely why she may have issues with the Tenakth at the embassy. They're hard fighters, a warlike people, and they were the Mad Sun King Jiran's biggest obstacle. There are a lot of wounds there that Avad has been trying to heal. They'll probably be difficult personalities to reason with, and truthfully, rightfully so. At this embassy, Avad has negotiated the return of a Karja soldier, his cousin actually, Fashav, a fine soldier and an honorable man. He tried to hold back the tides of the Red Raid on Tenakth lands, but he was captured by them and taken prisoner over 5 years ago. That the Tenakth didn't kill him speaks to the man's combat ability and character, and that they're willing to let him go home is a good sign that peace can be lasting. Avad is glad to see his cousin returned to where he belongs. When she is ready to head out, Blameless Marad gives her directions on how to reach the embassy. It will be past a canyon called the Daunt, on the border of Sundom territory at a place called Barren Light, about 2 weeks' travel on foot. But Varl chimes in that if they ride machines, it should only be a few days. She asks that they rest in the city that night to head out fresh in the morning. Not because she actually wants to rest, but, well, that night she sneaks out and ditches Varl. Kinda ruthlessly rude, given that the reason she got all this information was because she listened to his advice on what her next move should be. She rides non-stop until she reaches the Daunt. This is Karja land, but the Oseram have claimed some territory. She's on very good terms with both of these people. There's a good chance that she could run into familiar faces here. She'll have to be carted down into the canyon, but Karn, the keeper of the Skytram, tells her that there's been serious trouble in the Daunt. It's infested with machines that don't belong in the canyon. Somehow they got in, they're pouring in, and no one is allowed down until the all-clear is given. Aloy conveys that she isn't going to wait around, practically threatening to just steal the thing. So rather than kick up a fight with her, Karn decides to take her down. He's probably bored anyways, and someone has to bring the platform back up. Karn tells her about the work stoppage due to the machines pouring in. Bristlebacks, they're called. No one knows where they came from. They just suddenly appeared one day, and some self-proclaimed boss man named Olvind won't allow hunters to cull them. Aloy would like to pass through, not get involved, but The Karja Sun priest who's supposed to be running the embassy is stuck here too. And if he's not present, then the embassy won't happen. This ever-important man is named Waris, and he is insufferable. The sort that has to get his way or he has a tantrum. Real punchable face, that one. He chills the attitude a little bit when Aloy's title is conveyed to him, Savior of Meridian. He says that he will not be walking through the Daunt until the Oseram captain of the Vanguard gives him the all-clear. So if she wants the embassy to happen, she has to get involved to solve this bristleback problem. Lucky for her, the Oseram captain is Erend. The main town here is called Chainscrape. She can stop in to upgrade her gear, get some food, a rest, chat with friendly faces. Another old friend is here, Petra. She fills Aloy in on some of the goings-ons in the Daunt over a mug of beer. This Olvind guy seems to be directly benefiting from the bristlebacks appearing. When Oseram Vanguard came through for supplies, he was extremely unhappy about it, and he says the Karja are responsible for the bristlebacks. He seems to be trying to manipulate the workers into a strike so they can negotiate a concessions or a list of demands. One of them being that the Daunt would operate under Oseram law and leadership. The Karja would have no claims to the resources of the land, and Olvind has a lot of investment in the land, which would make him filthy rich, and he could seize power over the territory. Olvind himself is on the surface pleasant enough. He's not snide or rude, but neither is he welcoming or helpful. He clearly has rehearsed a lot of his lines and says them towards the settlement loudly rather than to her directly. He takes a lot of credit for Chainscrape's existence, which is how he validates his assumed leadership position here. His tactics have worked because it's easy to stoke up Karja resentment given that the Red Raids were relatively recent. A Karja magistrate, Javad, fills her in a bit more on what they know of the bristleback, educates her on how the Daunt being under Oseram law would impact investments and claim rights. And while Olvind's demands are clearly ridiculous, the Daunt is needed for the reconstruction of Barren Light. If operations don't pick up here, they might have to consider giving in to his demands. Well, sounds like she needs to track down Erend. There are people in the Daunt that will need help against the machines, some ruins that she can explore, and a ton of resources she can pick up on her way. She hears Erend before she sees him. Bro wields his hammer like it's an extension of himself. He's happiest when he's out in the field, not trapped in the day-to-day boredom of his captain duties. Clearing the bristleback is right up his alley in terms of missions. He hasn't seen her since the Battle of the All-Light, so her randomly walking into the Daunt catches him completely off guard, distracts him, and he lands himself a few busted ribs from a bristleback because of it. She helps him out, clears the rest of the bristlebacks, and they have a bit of a reunion. She fills him in on Hades and her need to journey west, and he is excited for it, a new adventure just like old times. He's too injured to help her clear the machines, so he's gonna head to Barren Light to get taken care of. He'll wait for her there, and then they will head out together. She insists that it's better that she goes alone, but Erend isn't shy about putting her on blast. He's not diplomatic about it like Varl was. Erend isn't one to soften his words. A lot of people fought beside her at the Battle of the All-Light. They sacrificed too. They bled too, and they did it for her. Aloy just disappearing without a word was confusing, if not plain insulting. She insists she had good reason, but it doesn't get a pass. So she tells him the truth. She tells him that everyone is going to die if she doesn't repair some old one technology. That gets him to stand down, but the bro has a point. Aloy has a lot to learn about respecting other people's beliefs and points of view. Being the lone wolf savior and holier than thou isn't going to win a lot of people over to her side, and she could lose friends because of it. She tracks and kills Bristleback throughout the canyon, eventually finding the heart of the Dawn's mining operations. Clearing out that field means that it's safe for workers to resume their labor. In fact, she's cleared so many machines from the Daunt at this point that the entire area might be able to resume operations. But before she goes back to Chainscrape, she does some investigating. The Karja magistrate, Javad, had said that the Bristleback were first spotted to the west of that mining operation, near the back of the valley. The Bristleback corpses that she finds here show signs of tampering, which is odd. She tracks their paths back to an old mine. It seems to be where they all came from. This mine went deep into the mountain, far deeper than it should have. There's evidence here that Olvind kept ordering them to blast farther and farther back. If he's responsible for making an entrance for the bristleback, then something devious is afoot. It raises the question, was this intentionally done by Olvend, or is he capitalizing on egregious misconduct? She takes us back to that Karja magistrate first, and he encourages her to continue investigating the matter. They need solid proof of Olvend's intentions, and the man himself refuses to blow the whistle to get laborers back to work. The bristleback might be cleared out, but he wants to send out scouts to confirm it, which will take time, a couple days probably. He knows that the Karja need to get to the embassy. He's using that as leverage against them to get his way. He is a real snake in the grass. She's able to apply enough pressure to him to command the whistle be blown, though. At this point, merchants are available, the Karja Sun priest Vadis can get on his way to the embassy, and she can choose to move on if she wishes. Barren Light is a nice enough outpost. The last stop before the Forbidden West, the very edge of Karja territory. There are shops to peruse, people to talk to, but she's really looking for errand here. The heart of the outpost is a large prison. Before the exit gates is a path lined with holding cells, and a man in one of them starts yelling for her attention as soon as she's inside. His name is Conover, and he tells her that the Eclipse is within the Daunt. The Eclipse were loyal to the Mad Sun King Duran. They worshipped Hades. They were allies of the Shadow Karja. No one believes Conover, though. They think that the Eclipse was wiped out at the Battle of the All-Light. But he insists that one of the awesome sentries he was with was helping them. When Conover found the sentry meeting with the Eclipse, he was attacked. Conover killed the sentry, but nobody believes his story. He has been convicted of outright murder and has been sentenced to death. Evidence of the sentry being with the Eclipse couldn't be found. There's nothing to back up Conover's story. So Aloy promises that she will go out into the wilds to look for it. If she can find proof that the Eclipse is in the Daunt, Conover will be a free man. She has time before the embassy. This man is clearly in dire need of help, so she immediately heads out. The site of the killing is easy enough to find, but Aloy has tools that the Karja don't, namely her focus. She can use it to determine if there were other people here. She finds evidence that someone was in the hills nearby, and she follows their footprints through the Daunt. They were injured by machines, set up a temporary camp to tend to their wounds, and managed to get back to a cave which has been commandeered by Eclipse survivors. Conover was right, they are in the Daunt. They want to get to the Forbidden West, but they have to go through Barren Light to do it. They're planning an attack at the nighttime guard change. These survivors are clinging to hope that the prophecies of a now very dead High Priest Bahavas weren't wrong. They're being led by somebody named Vezreg, who preaches that their answers and true power lies somewhere in the West. All Eclipse survivors are being called there to gather. Aloy cuts down whoever is here and takes the mask of the Eclipse member that the sentry was talking to as further proof of Conover's innocence. In fact, Conover's actions have resulted in a lot of lives being saved. It's yet another reason Aloy needs to go west. The Eclipse are dangerous fanatics, and they're reassembling to form a new army. This cannot be allowed. Erend is here, waiting for her, drinking his time away. The guy has been through a lot of pain and drinks to soften it. Drinks a lot, it seems. He tells her what he's been up to for the last 6 months, shares what little he knows about the Tenakth, and explains that this outpost was used during the Red Raids to hold captives or sacrifices. This place has a foul history. The Tenakth wrecked it when they pushed the Karja out of their territory, and Avad is trying to rebuild it into something new, but those are wounds that will take a long time to heal. He doesn't ask to go with her, he knows it's pointless to try. So instead he wishes her luck and promises that if she needs anything, all she has to do is ask. The only way she's getting through the gates leading out of Barren Light is if she has approval from Commander Nazar, and he's a difficult, high-strung type. His second-in-command, Lawin, is far more approachable. He gladly takes her to see Nazar and gives her fair warning about what to expect. Nazar is respectful of others, but a stern leader. He makes her acquaintance and fills her in on what's happening when she rudely demands answers. The embassy can't begin until both sides have signaled that they're ready. The Tenakth are composed of 3 tribes, and only 2 of them has signaled that they are ready. The embassy cannot begin without the 3rd. She demands that they go out and investigate, and for someone who hates being called the savior of Meridian, she leverages her title against him with brazen disregard for customs. It has taken a lot for this embassy to happen, and Nazar will not consent to her just waltzing through their lines, jeopardizing peace talks because she wants to, something she absolutely refuses to accept. On her way down, she spots Varl riding in. He has tracked her ass down, but she doesn't even give him a second look. She wants to do this all by herself. She tries to demand the guards open the gate, and it gets her nowhere. She won't get her way no matter how much she commands or vaguely threatens. Erend is able to convince Nazar, though, with surprising effectiveness for someone so clearly drunk. Varl will not allow her to go through this alone, though. The guy is full of forgiveness and understanding, given that she ditched him back in Meridian. Aloy tries to convince the Tenakth at the borderline that she's not with the Karja, that she's here on her own, completely separate from the peace talks. But the warriors from the west are far from convinced. They won't allow her passage no matter what she tries to convince them of. But there is someone here who can bring some sense to this back and forth. Fashav, the cousin of Sun King Avad, their supposed prisoner who wears their garb and is free to speak. In fact, his words seem to be respected by the Tenakth. He tells them that she is from another tribe and asks that they hear her out, as a favor to himself before he's taken away to Karja territory. It's clear that her demands won't get her through this. Fashav can. She needs his aid, and to get it, she'll have to slow down and explain herself. Fashav very clearly issues a reminder that this is a delicate affair taking place, and her presence could have jeopardized it. She's gotten that message from both sides now, so it really is time to advocate for her cause and explain herself. She asks Fashav about how he came to be seemingly so accepted amongst the Tenakth, and he tells her his story. After he was captured, he was taken back to the Tenakth capital at Memorial Grove, and there he was presented to their chief, Hekarro. Fashav demanded trial by combat, what they call the Kulrut. He thought that maybe by winning, the chief would grant him a boon. The other Tenakth mocked this prisoner for his request, but Chief Hekarro took him very serious and respected him for it. The Kulrut turned out to be an arena fight against machines. Well, Fashav survived, but he didn't win his freedom. He won the honor of serving the chief as a marshal. It took time for him to earn respect amongst them. He had to learn that they responded to aggression and power, not kind words or coddling. Though they hail from very different cultures, Chief Hekarro has a lot in common with the Sun King of Ad. They've both worked tirelessly to bring about peace, unite neighboring tribes, and establish fair and just laws. And Fashav wants to tell the Karja all about what he's learned, break down the old beliefs that they had of the Tenakth, perhaps serve as an ambassador between the two. But now it's her turn. Aloy explains exactly why she wants to go west. The source of the turbulent climate, the rampaging machines, the toxic soil is in the west, and she's the only one with the genetic code to stop it. Fashav knows the stories of what happened in Meridian, so he grants her his knife, which will serve as proof that she has permission to be in the west. But he further puts her on the spot. She claims to be saving the world, yet there's only 2 of them. She could try to scrape up excuses, but the truth is that she's ditched everyone that wanted to help. Fashav delivers a stern lesson. Allies are essential. He tells her to seek Chief Hekarro himself. His aid would be invaluable. The last of the 3 tribes has finally decided to arrive to issue a response to the embassy summoning. The very intense man who's brought them says that they're all he could convince to come with him, and their commander isn't aware that they're here, so they need to be quick. The other Tenakth are totally on board with getting things going, so finally the embassy begins. A chest of treasure is brought out, a gift from King Avad, and Wadis starts his speech about, I don't know, peace or something. A stern voice interrupts their meeting, though. Regala, of the Tenakth, but without a tribe. Fashav calls her a mistake, an exile, someone that Hekarro should have killed. She refuses to accept any peace with the Karja, not after the atrocities of the Red Raids. She's rebelled against her chief, gathered supporters, and is here to kill as many marshals as possible. Somehow, she has control over machines. She can use them to bolster her numbers, to attack at her command, to use as transportation just like Aloy does. The only one who could have given them this sort of power is Sylens. Why the hell would he help Tenakth rebels and aid them in inciting a civil war? Sylens is many things, but careless isn't one. The field churns into a madhouse. The rebels slaughter or maim from a distance. This wasn't to be a place of battle. This was meant to be diplomatic. The embassy participants stood no chance. There's absolutely no honor in what is happening here. It's cold-blooded murder. The rebels don't descend into the field until the bulk of the work is done, and they do so still riding machines that are more lethal than themselves. Eventually, it's whittled down to just Aloy and Varl. Regalla's apparent right-hand man asks for the honor of killing them, which she grants. It doesn't go well for him. Aloy hits him in weak spots to break off his armor. She could just go in for the kill, but she beats him down until he's down to his underpants and then delivers a killing blow. In Regalla's eyes, this has earned them their lives, at least for today. She calls back her soldiers and revels in the war that they have just started with the Tenakth and the Karja. They depart, leaving what few survivors there may be to collect the dead. Fashav was lost in the battle, as was Commander Nazar, Sun Priest Vadis, almost all of the Karja soldiers, most of the Tenakth. The marshal who brought the third clan has lost an arm. Varl's too beat up to travel, so she really is on her own now. She still has rite of passage from Fashav, so soon she will depart into the heart of the Forbidden West. Lawwyn now has command over Barren Light and very kindly gives her insights into what is in each direction. He even directs her towards a Talneck so she can form a proper map. It won't be a straight line into Tenakth territory. There are other tribes that exist out here too that she'll have to pass by. And she'll need to be careful of the Eclipse and Regalla's forces. Her first stop will be a bit north of Barren Light, where one of Regalla's rebel camps is suspected to be. She'll clear it out, look for intel, and see if they have anything to do with the bristlebacks flooding into the Daunt. They were riding them, after all. She finds machine holding pens first. There aren't a lot of rebels here. It's easy enough to sneak or kill her way through. But in the back of the camp, she finds a huge sinkhole where a large holding area was. It looks like something destroyed the rocks underneath it, and all the bristleback that were being held here fell into it. There's only one corpse. The rest of them went someplace, through a tunnel leading into the mountain. Ulvin's unsanctioned explosions in that mining tunnel. That's how the bristleback got into the Daunt. Oh, this is too spicy to not take back to Chainscrape, once she's done here, of course. The main camp isn't far off. It's far better patrolled than the pens were. She stealth kills her way up and into it, with her primary goal to find who is running this place. The more she upsets their operations out here, the less power Regalla will have and the less danger there is to Barren Light. They've been capturing and enslaving Oseram that enter no man's land between Karja and Western territories. Thankfully, they're people who are healthy enough to move without her out of the camp and get back to safety all on their own. Aloy kills the camp leader and discovers that a group called the Sons of Prometheus are allied with Regalla. They gave her the machine overrides, which means Sylens enabled them to do so. This web is just becoming more and more tangled. She's learned all that she can here, so it's time to get back to Chainscrape to inform the Oseram workers what she's found in regards to the bristleback. And once the truth comes out, the people of Chainscrape promptly turn against Ulvund. The magistrate promises that every dealing Ulvund has ever had is going to be thoroughly investigated, but to avoid the humiliation of it, Ulvund agrees that he'll just leave the Daunt. Good riddance. Petra will step in to lead in his place. She will be far more reasonable to deal with than Ulvund. She'll work to empower the workers, not stoke fears in the Forge. It's time to enter the Forbidden West. Aloy's first major stop will be the set of coordinates that Sylens gave her at the Spire in Meridian. It's surprisingly not too far away. He made his camp under the husk of a Horus Titan, and it's still lit up bright as though just waiting for her. And a holo video is loaded, waiting to be played, and of course it's Sylens, being his usual smarmy self. He doesn't dance around what he's been up to. Yes, he did steal Hades to interrogate and torture it for information. And while it might seem inhumanly cruel, what Sylens has learned is priceless and of direct benefit to her. He knows all about the mysterious signal that changed Hades. It was received for just over 17 years, but he doesn't provide her the source. Sylens focuses in on Gaia instead. Hades implied that there was a backup, but if Aloy wants to find it, she'll have to continue following Sylens' trail. There are datapads that expand on the torture process Hades went through, little bits of information that Sylens wrote down. It's all been left here so that she can find it. There are no great secrets that she'll uncover, more just breadcrumbs from Sylens to motivate her into compliance. It's his version of clickbait, you might say. As Aloy runs the riverbanks after him, she wonders how the hell Sylens could have found something so casually that she spent months searching for. It had to have been because of Hades, but what could the broken AI have told him that she never found out in the wilds? The farther she goes into no man's land, the fewer Oseram there are. Closer to Barren Light, there were lots of explorers, merchants, and delvers out and about, but it grows quieter by the footstep now. She tracks Sylens to an old ruin, where Hades has been left. There's not much left of him now. The orb is almost completely hollow. But there's a tiny bit left for her to see, that she can interface with her own spear. She sees a barren wasteland, what might be seen as perfection to Hades. What's bleak to her would be desirable for him. He asks if she's finally come here to destroy him, and she confirms that yes, she is here to end him, and this time it will be completely. His existence, even like this, would be a threat to Gaia when she's revived. And that she hasn't been restored feels like a victory to Hades. He doesn't have a lot of memory left. He can't answer many of her questions. He does remember that Sylens left him here 12.8 days ago, and that she was meant to find Hades here on what he calls his deathbed. Aloy is worried over what the other subordinate functions are doing without Gaia. Hephaestus kills thousands every year. Hades almost destroyed the world, but her unhappiness is satisfying to Hades. Though he is her adversary, Hades is not some stereotype villain cackling at others' misfortune. He answers her questions as fully as he can. He was created to achieve destruction. It's just in his nature to want it. Even when she asks where the signal came from, Hades doesn't try to play word games. He tells her that the Master sent it, but he's too broken and hollow to say more, thanks to the brutal tactics of Sylens. It is clear that Hades has nothing left. It's time for him to be put down. He guarantees that extinction is inevitable, though. She may think him a failure, but he's actually done this 3 times, in 2154, 2161, and 2168. Surprise, surprise, Aloy. Gaia is not truly all-powerful, not always correct. She fails. Her subordinate functions are absolutely fallible. After each destruction event, Gaia was allowed to try again, but there will be no more attempts after this version. And if she thinks she can stop what's coming to this world, then she's deluded. She activates her genetic alpha override and orders the purge of Hades. This time, he'll stay dead. That's his cue, Sylens. Time for him to call in, have a chat with Aloy. While he is a bit insufferable and very egotistical, Sylens does lay reality out for her without softening the impact. He took measures to find the truth that she couldn't. She chose a path to follow, and he did the same for himself. And while she might be angry that he didn't tell her what he was doing, his life doesn't revolve around her. He's the main character of his own story, and he doesn't answer to her. His research has been demanding and critical to the fate of the planet. She might think herself the only one who can save the world, but he's actively proving her wrong by being 3 steps ahead at every turn. Case in point, he found the Gaia backup. She didn't. It's beyond a door that he could never open, so he acknowledges that he needs her. He needs other people to help him along the way, and he will ensure that it happens on his terms. Aloy's genetic code opens this door. This was a Hades testing facility to effectively gauge its abilities, and a backup of Gaia was kept here. This place was untouchable by outside remote signals. You wouldn't want some rogue third party tampering with an AI meant to destroy the world, or worse, you wouldn't want Hades getting out. Sylens does know more about the strange signal that changed Hades, but he's not going to tell her yet, one thing at a time. He needs her to focus on Gaia first. That signal required Hades to be effective, so if she deletes any traces of Hades from the Gaia backup, then they won't have to worry about a repeat doomsday scenario. Simple as that. She tries to end their conversation with a very direct threat. If he keeps secrets from her again, she'll find him and kill him, but it doesn't land. He lays out that she wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, and he gives her a lesson on manners and being humble before piecing out like a boss. He is having none of her backtalk or her sass. The hatch into the facility has sat here completely untouched for about 1,000 years, so things aren't completely operational. The door gets stuck. Takes some extra work to jostle it enough to get it back on track. Another feat made possible because of Sylens' help. But once inside, oh boy, it's a mess. This place didn't age well at all. Broken walkways, flooding, corrupted data pads. It seems that old Travis Tate had incredible foresight and care when it came to Hades. Faro tried to cut corners when it came to costs, for some reason. I mean, it was the end of the world. Why the hell did cost matter? But Travis Tate was having none of it and flat out told Ted no when it came to compromises with Hades. As carefree as he seemed to be, he really did try with Elizabeth. He might be one of the few people in the world that she would have considered a friend. She didn't act like it though. He tried to have fun, tried to joke, called her on her self-imposed isolation. And for being a porn-loving metalhead dork, he had some sage-like insights. And if somebody compromised his work, like a particular Far Zenith spy that tried to steal Gaia, he would mercilessly protect it. Aloy finds an audio log between Elizabeth and Tilda Vandermeer in regard to the logic bomb and getting a copy of Apollo for Far Zenith. The two had been romantically involved, but Elizabeth wasn't willing to commit herself to Tilda. Their relationship ended on respectful but quite sad terms. At the end of this conversation, Tilda asked if they could speak again, assumedly before the end, but Elizabeth very sharply cut her off. Those were the last words she'd ever say to her. Yet, once the call ended, she said to herself that it was enough, it was time to let go. Losing Tilda hurt her, but she never let it show. Finally, into Hades' holding area, Aloy gets to see what he and Gaia were tested within, a machine in the design of a recluse spider. There are separate Hades and Gaia repositories. There are 2 Gaia backups left. But it's only the root kernel, only the base of Gaia. There are no subordinate functions. Sylens explains that Gaia could grow from it if she had her subordinate functions, which at first is terrible news. The sub-functions could be anywhere, could be anything at this point if they mutated like Hades. But if they can find them, then there is a chance that they could put Gaia back together. Aloy starts a scan for them and actually gets a response from Minerva. She's close enough to reach west past the settlement called Plainsong in the Forbidden West. Even one sub-function would be enough to get some of Gaia back. And if Gaia is aware, then maybe she can help them find the other sub-functions as well. Maybe even help wrangle in Hephaestus. No one else should be here. Nobody should be able to open the front door, yet an alarm begins to sound. Sylens tries to explain that there are powerful people coming, but that they won't hurt her. They need her alive, because she has Elizabeth Sobek's DNA. They're here because of the coordinates that he had transmitted to her. She wasn't the only one that got them. He implores her to just let them in, submit to the inevitable, but that's a steep ask. She promises violence again and breaks her silent spyware focus. Time for a fresh new one. It'll at least get her a little privacy for a while. She's completely unwilling to just let some strangers through a door. She would rather just leave without making their acquaintance, but imagine her surprise when the door starts to open without her. 4 strangers enter the room, accompanied by machines that Aloy has never seen the likes of before. One of them, a man, orders one called Beta to retrieve the Gaia backup kernel, and she's just like Aloy. Beta is another clone. They look like they could be twins. But the other people with Beta, they're not kind to her. At least the male voices aren't. She's ordered to check if the transmission they received originated here, and the one called Beta sees clearly that someone else was here, but she doesn't say anything. Just does as she was asked, which unfortunately blows Aloy's cover. The man in the middle of them, the apparent leader of this little group, isn't concerned over Aloy's presence. Not intrigued, not interested, doesn't care. The woman immediately pieces together where Aloy came from, but, doesn't matter. He doesn't want another clone of Sobek running around. Sylens had said that they wouldn't hurt her, but oh boy, was he wrong. Sylens didn't think that they would have their own clone of Sobek, and probably didn't think they'd be celestial-sized douchebags. 2 of them depart with Beta restrained, and the one named Eric steps forward to kill Aloy. This man is the worst of the worst, a lover of violence who spent his time in virtual reality butchering, But VR didn't keep him satisfied. Diminishing returns and such. Killing Aloy would be a pleasure, but I snap a lot of necks in VR is hard to take serious. His suit looks like a diaper baby onesie and his hair is stupid. How do you go to the bathroom in that thing? You just shit your pants and sit in all day, Mr. Poop Pants Eric? For being a big scary killer in VR, he is completely ineffective at handling a single barbarian. He can fly, he has a personal shield, incredible strength and powers from his suit. There's no reason for him to fail here, and yet he does. Because he can't think more than 3 seconds ahead. Aloy brings the recluse spider directly down onto him, giving herself enough time to make her escape via the water drainage system. She does miscalculate her exit though, ends up blowing out an entire wall, gets caught up in the currents of it, and thrown out into a river. What lies at the bottom of the river is far more dangerous than the man Eric was. Felled trees, plant life that wraps around limbs, currents that keep you under. Aloy runs hard into the riverbed, gets pulled through the depths, and is knocked right out. That she washes up on shore is a nigh miracle. And for the rest of her days, she should be thankful that it was her good friend Varl that found her there. She sees Rost in her delirium. She calls out to him, but she can't stay conscious for long. She's in very bad shape and in need of help. Varl sees her safely delivered to the territory of the Utaru tribe, a mostly peaceful farming-based community. For 2 days, they tend to and nurse her back to relative health. Her ribs are pretty cracked up, and when vital bones are damaged, it makes even basic movements difficult. She insists on rising, though. Minerva is near, west of this precise place within the mountains. It's so close, what she's been searching for so long. Varl asks her to first meet with a woman named Zoe. There have been troubles in those mountains. Aloy needs to understand what she could be walking into, and this is Utaru land. She should ask consent, and Zoe can help here. Right now, Aloy needs help, even if she doesn't want to admit it. Being bullheaded may cause problems and just slow her down. Zoe is a grave singer. When one's life is coming to an end, she sings to them. She gives them company and eases their passing. Right now, she's singing to a suffering machine, one of the Utaru land gods named Ray. Zoe firmly corrects Aloy, calling Ray an it. These machines are honored and loved. They tend to the soils of Plainsong. They bring bounty to the Utaru. They're farming machines, the cornerstone of the Utaru way of life. But Ray is very sick. Aloy's focus spots that something is wrong with a limb. It's like the equivalent of an infected leg. She removes it from Ray, and she gets right back up. The Utaru had feared that Ray was going to die. This is such a relief to see. Zoe tells Aloy of the mountain to the west. It's a place that the land gods travel to once a year, and when they return, they're restored to being good as new. It's a very special type of cauldron. It's a repair bay, and to the Utaru, it is a sacred place. But the land gods stopped their annual journey. Some of them have begun falling apart. The land god called Fa went in 3 weeks ago and never came back out. Instead, violent machines are emerging, and the land gods that do still tend the fields are over-fertilizing and killing crops. They're sowing a blight. Over the years, they've grown more aggressive, sometimes even attacking on sight. Tenakth rebels and the Eclipse are capitalizing on their weaknesses by attacking outskirts of their territory. The Utaru are in dire straits and very much in need of help. They must get permission to enter that sacred cave, or at least try to first. Zoe will return to their main settlement, a place called Plainsong, summon their governing circle called the Chorus, and request access to it. It will take time to gather the Chorus together, so Aloy has time to heal. She can overhear Varl and Zoe speaking as she rests. The two are clearly enamored with each other. Their chemistry is clear as day. They are smitten. She wants Varl to go with her, but he's afraid that if he leaves, Aloy will just run off again. Pretty blunt thing to overhear, but he's not wrong. She has a terrible track record when it comes to ditching people. But Aloy tells Varl once he comes in to see her that he should absolutely go with Zoe. She won't disappear again. She'll meet them in Plainsong when she is healed. Her promise is enough. Varl runs off like a grinning fool to journey with Zoe. She, in the meantime, gets a few days of much-needed rest. This new territory is covered in places to explore, histories to hear and read about, people to meet and help, mysteries to solve. There are even some old friends that Aloy can track down if she so desires. Waiting on the chorus to assemble is anything other than boring out here, but all roads lead back to Plainsong eventually. When she does arrive, the humming of its people fills the air. Varl and Zoe are waiting for her. It's time to get this underway. Zoe warns that the chorus is in disharmony. The dire straits of this land are difficult enough, but some within the chorus are deeply set in old ways, and it's dividing its members, as well as the tribe itself. The chorus was only fully assembled because of public pressure. Varl and Zoe spread news of how the land god Ray was healed, and it kicked up enough of a fuss to make this possible. Plainsong itself is uniquely gorgeous, like a woven basket turned into a sprawling, tiered village. They are so very different from what she saw of the Tenakth, yet their territories are quite close together. The chorus is being held at the top of the village, and its people are singing to soothe the disharmony of the fighting chorus. Their music relents once Aloy presents herself to speak with them. She barely gets her request started before Nipple McGee interrupts to protest against it. He and some within the chorus would rather do nothing because, well, it's tradition. If that means they die, then it's just the natural order of things. They would sentence the children of others to death because they deny that change is a law of life. And it takes some nerve for an old woman to tell a young child that they don't deserve a chance at life because it violates their own beliefs. During this meeting, the cordon that has been keeping hostile machines away from Plainsong breaks down. It won't be long until they're right at the village's footstep. It's something that needs to be stopped, but this too will allow them a distraction so that they can enter that cave. The will of the chorus be damned, it was really just a polite gesture anyways, even to Zoe. The Utaru are certainly battle-capable, though it's not the path they generally choose. They are able to take down many of these machines, but the casualties are heavy. These new beasts are stronger than the other machines that Aloy has seen. Varl, Zoe, and Aloy fight through the fields, very intentionally moving towards that sacred cave, and no one notices their trek. They make it into the cauldron with no outside resistance. Before they enter, Aloy gives Zoe a focus so that she too can have her famed second sight. It'll take her time to get used to it, but Zoe has a good head on her shoulders and a willingness to learn. Aloy makes them aware that whatever is within this facility is going to be damn dangerous. They'll have to have each other's backs in here. Aloy is hopeful that Minerva is here, but it's becoming more and more apparent that maybe she's not the only one here. This place reeks of Hephaestus. He's wrapped cords around the nodes of this place, usurped it, made it into a machine manufacturing facility. He's making carriers that are loaded with weapons, creating what looks like an army, but there's no indication of what he's going to do with them. They find the land god Fa deep into the cauldron, but she's being changed into some sort of a weapon. If the Utaru were to see this, it would shatter their beliefs, bring terror into their homes, and tear the tribe apart. They can't let Fa leave this place. They have to kill her. Lowering her barrier alerts Hephaestus to Aloy's presence, and he sends Fa out for combat. Massive flamethrowers have been attached to her horns. She has rockets she can launch and lob. She can stomp and send out shockwaves, and Hephaestus sends other machines out to aid Fa in killing the intruders. Putting her down, seeing Fa dead, knowing how much she meant to the Utaru, does make it a genuinely sad sight. They are machines, but so beloved by humans that it's hard to see them as just metal and wire. As for Zoe, her world has been turned upside down. She doesn't know what to believe anymore. She knows too much. Even if she did go back to her people, how long will life go on? The chorus is dooming its people. The lands are blighted. But Aloy says that what they're doing here is the start of healing for the Utaru. She goes out to the core of this repair bay cauldron and starts to purge Hephaestus from it. And he knows who she is. He tries to fight against the purge, but Hephaestus isn't trapped here. Far from it. He has spread through the old cauldron network like a virus. He withdraws to the network cloud to move on to another cauldron, with an emotionless promise that their culling is inevitable. But what about Minerva? There's a defunct regional control center here. A voice greets them as graduates of a cradle. Perhaps this was a place intended for them to go to when they came of age. But the voice changes when they enter. As they go, it tells them to vacate, urges them to leave. When Aloy tries to enter the main halls, it flat out tells her to stay out. Minerva is here, hiding, and if she's frightened or worse, feral, she could be dangerous. Aloy climbs through alone, with only emergency lighting to cast the mood. Minerva tells her that she's not wanted here, but the spookiness doesn't deter Aloy. She finds her way into a massive dome structure, and Minerva is sent into high alert over this. This is the system core, where she has been hiding. Aloy tries to activate it so that she can insert Gaia and integrate Minerva into it. It'll partially restore Gaia, at least make it so that she can talk to the AI, but Minerva panics and takes away the console. She's frightened. She doesn't know who Aloy is or what she wants. Minerva just wants to be left alone. Aloy explains that Minerva used to be something else. She wasn't always like this. She was a part of Gaia, and she can be that way again. Minerva asks if this will make her cease to be, but Aloy says that she'll just be different. Then Minerva asks, will this make the misery cease? Which is an easy yes. Minerva gives back the console. Aloy puts the Gaia root kernel in, and Minerva is brought home to rest with Gaia where she belongs. Thanks to Minerva's trust, Aloy has finally succeeded. Gaia is far from complete, but she's been rebooted and can grow with time. She calls Aloy Dr. Sobek, but corrects herself. She scans data on Aloy kept within the network and learns a bit about her. It will take several minutes for Gaia to fully reboot. She encourages her to go get a lay of the base, to use its resources. She opens up the base to Varl and Zoe, makes easy introductions with them, and creates a network connection between their focuses that will allow them to communicate over great distances. As Gaia wakes up, the three of them explore their new base of operations. It will take Gaia a while to get all the doors in this place open, a long while, actually. But as it is now, they have plenty of space to set up shop. Gaia calls Aloy back when she's fully rebooted, and they have a lot of work to do. Time is running out. The sensory capabilities of this facility are far more advanced than what was at the Hades Proving Lab. Gaia is able to reach out much farther to find the other subordinate functions. She'll need them to save the biosphere. Of what her scans can reach, Gaia cannot find Apollo, Artemis, or Eleuthia. But Aether, Demeter, and Poseidon are all within reach. They lie to the west. Hephaestus, though, is a little bit more complicated. He's not confined to a single spot. He has evolved. Containing him is going to be nigh impossible. But Hephaestus is absolutely essential to Gaia's functions. In fact, he's really the only hope for a permanent solution with the biosphere. They can only attempt to contain him after Gaia has been significantly enhanced. They will need to get Aether, Demeter, and Poseidon first. Aloy will need to physically go to their location, find the processors that they're inside, and then either convince or force them to comply via the master override, revert them back to their original code, and bring them back to Gaia. But what about those strangers, the ones that found and attacked her, who seem to have imprisoned another clone of Elizabeth? Gaia knows them to be related to the signal that changed Hades. She calls it the extinction signal. It came from outer space, from a distance so far that it would take light 8.6 years to travel. By her calculations, it came from the Sirius star system. Aloy knows that's where Far Zenith intended to send the Odyssey, but she thought that the ship blew up. Why would they lie about that? Why hide themselves from the future humans of Earth? Gaia conveys that at this point, they can only speculate about their intentions and desires. Not even she can put forth confident theories. Aloy can stay for a while to ask Gaia questions about the strangers, the other clone, the subordinate functions. Gaia estimates that they have 4 months left to save the biosphere. After that, there will be no healing the damage done. Even if they get Aether, Demeter, and Poseidon, it'll only extend that time by a few months. Without Hephaestus, they're doomed. Aloy's first goal will be Aether. It's someplace in Tenakth territory, and the closest of the three. Before she goes, she expresses doubts to Gaia, doubts of herself. Elizabeth has become saint-like to Aloy, a nigh impossible standard to hold herself to. Gaia tells her that Elizabeth had complete faith in Aloy. Her final message stated that in her, in Aloy, all things are possible. Gaia further comforts her, stating that she has prevailed before against Hades. She will succeed here as well. Now, it's time to get a move on. While Aloy journeys farther west, Zoe and Varl will stay behind. Varl is going to fetch Erend to bring him here and get him up to speed on everything. He will be another valuable ally to have, and no doubt he would want to be here. Zoe will stay at the base to learn more about, well, everything. The next time Aloy returns, they will be far more equipped to help her out. Should Aloy choose, she can return to Plainsong to help its people, take down Tenakth rebels, challenge the Chorus's decision to remain unmoving, even take down the Eclipse. There's a lot of good that she can do for the Utaru, but she does inevitably have to leave them behind to go farther west. Fashav's dagger suffices as proof that she has permission to travel through Tenakth lands. Without him, this would have been a far different experience. His counsel was wise, and he died a truly honorable man. It's a deed that she will have to tell the Sun King of Odd all about one day. The coordinates she has for Aether take her to some ruins which have been converted into a Tenakth stronghold. This is Memorial Grove. The first she meets is an older woman named Dekka, a woman who is clearly a force to be reckoned with here. Dekka is the chaplain of the Lowland clan. She greets Aloy with respect as she's heard stories of what happened at Barren Light. Dekka understands that she is seeking something here, but Aloy will need to speak with Chief Hekarro himself before she proceeds further. Fashav spoke highly of the chief. Though of the Tenakth, he doesn't default to war or violence to solve issues. He is someone that she can reason with, and he has been expecting her. As they walk together, Dekka tells Aloy of the Ten, the old ones that the Tenakth revere. This place was once a memorial museum dedicated to the men and women of Joint Task Force 10. Over the years, the holograms have powered down. To the Tenakth, they've just seemed to vanish. Chaplains like Dekka remember and pass on the deeds of the Ten. They're like religious historians. Back in the 2030s, during the climate crisis that threw the world into chaos, people who lived in what we know today as Lower Nevada, California, parts of western Arizona were ordered to evacuate. The area was deemed uninhabitable, a hot zone, and the federal government seized the land via executive order. This was seen as a land grab for mineral-rich lands, though. A man named Roberto Medina, who had mining claims in the region, defied the government order and put his wealth towards helping people stay in their homes. He also created his own militia to fight against the order. He made deals with foreign cartels for water security and openly denounced the doings of the federal government. At first, non-lethal methods were used to try handling Medina's militia, but once it was clear that there would be no peaceful or easy resolution, the US government used drones and live ammo. It all ended in 2037 during what became known as the Battle of the Mojave, when a massive explosion took out Joint Task Force 10's base and a nearby refugee shelter. Over 900 people were killed. It's hard to say if what is here is historically accurate, propaganda, or a bit of both, but what does that matter? To the Tenakth and what they know of the Ten, they're symbols of strength, bravery, and wisdom. Chief Hekarro tempered the warlike tendencies of the Tenakth when he took power. He taught his people that it wasn't just fighting that made the Ten worth deifying. The Tenakth are still barbaric as hell, though. Some things can't be changed over the course of a single generation. But outsider perceptions of them aren't quite correct anymore. They tasted the blood of their enemies to honor them. They took orphans to save their lives. They integrated them into their society. They gave them homes. And old practices that propagated war were outlawed in favor of diplomatic measures. Well, it's time to meet this mighty chief. Dekka escorts her to the throne room and leaves her to await Hekarro's arrival. She scans for the processor Aether is hiding in and finds that it is underneath the throne itself. So she can't just force her way through and take the AI. She needs the chief's cooperation. The man who lost his arm at the embassy is here. He is an extremely intense character. He does acknowledge her, promising that he'll see her soon. It's hard to tell if it's a threat, though. Fashav wasn't over-exaggerating when he spoke of the chief. Hekarro is a massive figure. He's very well-spoken, and, like Dekka, he greets her with respect. He knows of her deeds at Barren Light, and he grieves the losses there. He speaks well of Fashav, and he sees his endorsement of Aloy as a good sign of character. He'd hoped that Fashav would act as a bridge between the Karja and the Tenakth. Hekarro longs to bring literacy to his people, so they can keep records on paper, not just via tattoos on their bodies. He tells Aloy that her service to the Tenakth will be valued, but when she says that she just wants what's in the basement, he cuts her off sternly. He knows what's down there. She has named her price, and he will name his. Their exchange is going to be fair. She's not simply going to get what she wants. Aloy views this as being a hired killer for the chief, but he puts morality on the table between them. Regalla's rebellion has victimized so many, it's left the Tenakth with only a few marshals to protect its people. He is fighting for peace, to save lives, and if she wants what's in that basement, then she will too. She could try to take it, but she would have to kill Hekarro first. So does she want to kill him and truly leave the Tenakth defenseless, or will she stand against the rebellion? It's like choosing between the Mad Sun King Duran and his son Avad. Which one would she choose? She doesn't get to stand on the sidelines. Not choosing is making a choice. She tentatively agrees, and he tasks her with something a bit unexpected. He wants her to be a defender. He needs more marshals, but those can only be appointed during the Coal Route, that arena trial by combat that Fashav once took part in. He doesn't want her to defend him. He wants her to defend the Coal Route as it takes place. Regalla is sure to attack once it begins. He will need all the help that he can get. Regalla's hatred began during the Red Raids, when the Mad Sun King's forces entered Tenakth territory and burned her brothers alive. She wanted to escalate into full-blown war against the Karja, but Hekarro knew that the cost of a war was too high, and when he entered into peace talks with Avad, she snapped. She challenged Hekarro to combat, and it was a fight that she lost. Hekarro took mercy on her, let her live, but she interpreted it as a humiliation, and she will not stop until one of them is dead. The chief also wishes for her to travel north to the home of the Sky Clan. Their leader, Tenakth, has refused to send contestants for the Coal Route. He wants her to go there and kick his ass into gear. Hekarro believes that Tenakth is hiding behind his walls until Regalla wears the Tenakth down, so that he can make a power play against the chief. The man who lost his arm at the embassy is Marshal Qatalo, and he is going with her. He will act as a guide, and they will aid one another in this endeavor. They chat for a while before she goes, and Hekarro explains why he pursued peace over violence as the leader of the Tenakth. When Gaia died and Aether was thrown into the wilds, it landed here, and it caused a massive power surge. Hekarro was present, and he witnessed Aether's arrival, and from the power surge, a vision, a hologram, played out. It was one of the 10, a woman named Faraday, giving a speech to her marshals. She spoke of the dangers of the machines, of a coming battle, and she called for peace and unity instead of violence. Hekarro took this vision to heart. He renounced war, taught his warriors to fight machines instead of men, and created his own marshals via the Coal Route. Until Regalla rebelled, there was peace between the clans. He believes they can return to that peace. Chief Hekarro vows that she will have what she seeks after the Coal Route is complete. Time to get moving. Qatalo is rough and very no-nonsense. She meets him at a village called Stone Crest, and he wastes no time. Regalla's movements through this valley are brazen and concerning, but Stone Crest doesn't have enough soldiers to confront them. All they can do is watch and track them. They've seen that the rebels can't maintain control over the machines for long, at least not until they're taken to their base, where the control is somehow made permanent. It's a two-phase override system. Recently, they've been scouting for larger machines. Once they're off the mountainside, they'll certainly be fighting their way to the Sky Clan's home, the Bulwark. Tenakth believes that the Bulwark makes him invincible. No one has ever toppled it, and Qatalo thinks that their mission is pointless. He comes from the Sky Clan. He views himself as a maimed and useless marshal. He thinks that no one will respect him there. He's still in pain, but what happened to him, it will never heal. And she's just an outsider. What hope do they have? He calls his once leader, Tenakth, petty, vindictive, and a schemer, a coward waiting for an opportunity to strike from the safety of his home. He would watch the other clans burn if it meant that he could seize power for himself. Their journey through the valley is as dangerous as it is cold. Qatalo wasn't wrong about there being trouble on the path. They have to either fight or sneak their way around the rebels that are stripping machines on the roads. This is all Sky Clan territory, but there are no patrols or defenses pushing back against the rebels. Tenakth is allowing them into their territory in hopes that his enemies eat away at each other, weaken each other, do his work for him. Based on what they're encountering, this valley is going to be overrun with rebels before Tenakth realizes that he's in it deep. The Bulwark rests atop what seems to be the product of an avalanche. It's set upon massive boulders clogging a gap in the mountains, which keep it safe from anything that might approach from the ground, and the mountain sides are far too steep for anybody to attack from above. It certainly does seem like an untoppable city. Qatalo is granted access to the city with little question once he proves his station as a marshal. On the lift right up, Aloy happens to spot something metallic wedged into the bulwark's foundation. The avalanche that created this place must have happened during a battle in the old times. What else could be within that rock? Within the bulwark, Kotalo takes the lead. This place used to be home for him. He seems respected and recognized amongst the people, though to him, he's still just a maimed marshal with an outlander, a spectacle to be stared at. The guy is really hard on himself. Tekote is in his throne room playing a board game with one of his guards. Others lounge around, eating, chatting. There's no attempt to even seem concerned with the safety of the bulwark. And Tekote isn't shy about admitting his unwillingness to participate in Tenakth affairs. He would rather hide behind his walls than defend his lands. Tekote's disdain for Kotalo stems from feeling threatened by him. Ever since he was a young warrior, rising through the ranks, Tekote feared Kotalo's strength. But Kotalo never aspired to take over leadership. But Tekote viewed everybody around him as a threat to himself. This broke Kotalo's belief in him, and Tekote forced him to partake in the coal route so that he could be rid of the young warrior. For years, there's been no one to challenge Tekote, and he refuses to listen to logic. Fewer things make a person stupid than thinking that they're getting away with something, that false sense of security. So what better way to put a coward's self-assuredness in check than to destroy what they're so confident about? There's that old phrase, do not muck about, lest ye are willing to find out. Kotalo fears that they're going to have to kill Tekote, but Aloy has another idea. Bring down the bulwark. Show its people that they are not safe from the world here. Apply pressure to Tekote. Force him into compliance. Make him look like the little diaper baby that he is. She takes a little solo trip back to that metal wedged in the wall of the bulwark. Amongst other things, there is a tank in the wall, a combat tank, and the power core still has 43% power. She could blow it up, bring down part of the wall. Kotalo says that it would take the power of a cannon to do something like that. And, you know, the rebels have been stripping large weapons off of machines in the valley. There is heavy artillery available to them, they just have to go get it from the rebels. They track down just what they need at an old ruin. The rebels are trying to take over a massive mammoth machine, one loaded with weaponry. It's big enough that it could trample a small village in seconds. But they're having trouble getting it under control, so they're distracted. It's the perfect time for Aloy and Kotalo to ambush them. Because the Sky Clan isn't challenging their presence, the rebels aren't really on alert. They're lazy, loud, and slow. The two of them are able to cut their way through the outer perimeter, take down as many as they can, which is almost sad with how easy it is. There's very little attention being paid to their surroundings. It gives them time and space to set up traps all over the field for the mammoth machine to run through. In no time, they've got what they came for, a cannon. It's heavy as hell, but Kotalo is able to haul it back to the bulwark. He is fully on board with this insane plan, almost excited from the looks of it. Getting back into the field, taking the fight to the rebels was good for him, empowering in a way that only combat can provide the Tenakth. Their presence before the bulwark is noticed. Aloy sets up the cannon, aims and starts firing, but it doesn't trigger an explosion. There's a huge amount of rock to get through to reach that tank. A few big hits to the wall brings Tekote and his soldiers out. He mocks them, calls it embarrassing, tells them to just leave. Pretty savage for a man that's one cannon shot away from his world crumbling. Aloy gives him one more chance to respect Chief Hikaru's summon, and he keeps on with his grandstanding. So self-confident, it just can't be helped then. Aloy lines up her shot, fires, and blows up that tank's power core. This won't bring the entire village down, just part of the walls. For the first time, the bulwark has been compromised, and all within must acknowledge that their stronghold is far from secure. Half of the shield has been broken by a single cannon. Kotalo tells him that this place doesn't stand a chance against an army of machines. They must join the fight against the rebels or they will die. Tekote has no choice. He must send his best fighters to the coal route. He must join the war against the rebels. Not doing so would prove him to be a coward and a liar, a man unworthy of leading. Aloy can spend time here, helping anyone in need, learning more of the Sky Clan. There's no shortage of things to do, deeds that need accomplished, but she has to get back to Memorial Grove sooner than later. She promised to help defend the coal route, and the chief will be awaiting her return. Qatalo has informed Hekarro of everything that took place with the Sky Clan, and he is pleased at the public reprimanding of Tenakth. The coal route will attract a lot of spectators and participants. They all know to expect Regalla. There will be barricades set up at entrances to the arena, but her machines complicate the matter. The defenses have to hold. The coal route must take place. The Tenakth need their marshals badly. He expects Aloy to assist in setting up effective defenses and aiding in the inevitable fight Regalla will bring. Aloy spends the day going from place to place to check on the defenses, to speak with different leaders. The chaplain Dekka has managed to commandeer a big old gun off a machine, and the honor of using it will go to Aloy. Everything is ready, the crowds are gathered, the fighters prepared, and Aloy has a big kid gun. Time to get this party started. Chief Hekarro delivers his commencement speech, and the machines which will test the warriors gathered here today are loosed within the arena. Every challenger that takes one down will earn the title of Marshal. They each drop into the pit, and the coal route begins. Those strongest amongst the competitors quickly set themselves apart. Knockouts of both man and machine excite the audience. Their roars almost cover the sounds of machines running through the hills. Regalla, as expected, attacks. The barricades set up to intercept interference effectively slow the intruders' progress, and from a very high vantage point, Aloy lights them up with her weapon. Regalla's forces take quick and heavy losses. It's all far too easy. In a matter of just a few minutes, they're defeated, but Aloy and Dekka sense that there's something very wrong here. As the Tenakth defenders cheer their apparent victory, the ground starts to move. Something is underground, moving towards the arena. Regalla knew that she couldn't burst through the barricade without taking heavy losses. The initial attack was just a distraction. They are going to get into the arena by going underground. A massive tunneling machine launches through the ground straight at the chief. It's an underhanded, dishonorable tactic used by someone so desperate to win that they don't care what it takes. She threw away the lives of her soldiers for the sake of a short-lived distraction. Regalla and her rebels flood up through the ground, and as soon as she is on the surface, she beelines for Hekarro. Aloy remains in the arena to fight the machine that is absolutely wrecking the place. Qatalo and Hekarro will need to defend themselves. One of the coal route challengers, a woman named Avira, aids her by manning a ballista on the wall. It's a long fight that they ultimately win. There's a lot more battle to go. Tenakth warriors are handling the rebels, so Aloy runs for the throne room, where Qatalo is fighting back rebel intruders. Hekarro himself is fighting Regalla. Getting between them might cause more problems, so Aloy brings down part of their arena, putting a divider between the two. Qatalo and the remaining coal route challengers rush into the room to definitively put this to an end. Regalla's attack has failed, her force is defeated, and she is outnumbered. She promises that she'll be back with more forces, that this isn't over. To admit defeat would be another humiliation. Regalla and what remains of her forces flee from Memorial Grove. Hekarro names all the remaining challengers as marshals. They have more than proved themselves here. Amongst them is Avira, the warrior who aided Aloy against that big machine in the arena. She, and all with her here, will be his enforcers, his law. Another step in returning stability to the Tenakth after the slaughter at the embassy. Regalla's defeat here will mean further escalation. She'll get stronger machines, more rebels. Her vendetta won't allow anything otherwise. But Hekarro doesn't ask Aloy to stay. She has fulfilled her side of the deal. So he gives her access to what is beneath the throne. Simple as that. He departs with Qatalo, no doubt to plan their next move. She is finally getting what she came all the way out here for. The console containing Aether was just mere feet away from the surface, and it's so weak and cut off that Aether can only muster a few words in response to Aloy. Home. Gaia. She uses her master override, restores Aether's original code, and safely puts them into her data storage device. Turns out, Aether was utilizing the power here that was originally intended for the museum. With Aether removed, the visions, as the Tenakth call them, light back up on the surface, every single one, and some they'd never seen before. Importantly amongst them, the display of that woman Faraday, and the speech that Hekarro had heard long ago that inspired change in his heart. Now all can hear it, straight from the mouth of one of their deity 10. Long ago, humanity faced off against a broken biosphere and a machine threat much like humanity in this era, but she advocates for unity, peace, brotherhood, not infighting or power grabs. When Chief Faro advocated these ideas, many resisted, but to hear it straight from the 10 proves to them all that the chief was right. Not even Tenakth can deny it. The restoration of Memorial Grove will cement these values within the Tenakth, and they will be stronger for it. Hekarro has his new marshals, the clans will unite, so Qtalo has decided to accompany Aloy in her journeys. He's not needed here, and feels that whatever is left of his life is better given to her cause. He's about to go through one hell of a crash course in Old One technology. He will journey back to Plainsong, where Zoe will meet him and guide him to their base to get him inducted into their group. Erin should be there by now, too. Once her business is concluded here, she gets back on the road, back to the base, to deliver Aether, to check in on everyone, and to choose her next target. Erin seems to be slowly getting the hang of his new focus. He especially likes the music selection that comes from it, and Qtalo has made himself at home, savoring the privacy of his own space. All are making strides in learning about this technology. They call it their training. There are things about the old ones that captivate them, like chocolate frosting, a ration every good soldier should have, according to Qtalo, and other things that just confuse them, like ice skating. Aloy goes right for Gaia, though, to deliver Aether back home. Now Gaia will be able to stabilize weather events in the region, at least for the time being. Gaia shares something that occurred during her absence, an event that has her concerned. She received a coded message on her dedicated Eleuthia frequency, coordinates, and a message, SOS, the number 237, and beware. Gaia does not know if this is really from Eleuthia, or if somehow somebody knows that Gaia has been restored and does need help, or if someone is using the network to bait Aloy into a trap. The only one that would receive this message is Gaia herself, and Eleuthia shouldn't have known that Gaia was revived. The Zeniths did get the other root kernel of Gaia. They might have had their own version of her and sent the transmission in hopes of this Gaia responding, revealing her location. There are a lot of things that could be speculated, but she'll just have to go and take her chances and investigate it. Gaia doesn't know of anything in particular at these coordinates in the message, so Aloy will really be going in blind. Gaia made the executive decision to include Varl and Erin in this mission debriefing. They will be accompanying her. If it's a trap, she'll need help. She does some eye rolling, but one does not simply walk into Mordor and argue with Gaia. They will tackle this together. They will all answer this mysterious call for help. Aloy can take some time to upgrade her gear, catch up with everyone and their training. She speaks at length with Gaia about what Elizabeth was like, what the old ones who worked on Project Zero Dawn went through, how spectacular their dedication was to creating Gaia. They even discuss Cyan, the isolated AI created to prevent the Yellowstone caldera from exploding. Gaia has tried to contact Cyan, but it's been unresponsive to her requests, or just unwilling to talk to her. The last time Cyan had contact with an external AI, it was Hephaestus. It was a traumatizing experience to be sure, so Cyan probably doesn't want to make external connections again. Hopefully someday she'll come out of her shell, though. When Aloy has completed her business at the base, the trio depart to investigate those coordinates. It's one hell of a climb in the snow to reach it. The sound of strange gunfire catches their attention just before they reach the end of it, though. A fight is taking place. They sneak over and spot one of the Zenith. It's not a good sign. But she's fighting Tenakth rebels, completely alone. Why is she here by herself? And what are rebels doing on a snow-covered mountain? It's a strange scene to take in. Everyone is very out of place. But the rebels and an Oseram man load a ballista with a very strange ammunition and launch it at the Zenith. It doesn't hurt her, but it breaks her shield. It's like she doesn't understand what they just did, not until one of them runs her through with a spear. So, the Zenith absolutely can be killed, their shields destroyed. But how the hell did the rebels do this? How did they figure something like this out? It's not a stable weapon, though. After it's discharged, the ballista explodes and kills the rebels carrying it. The last communication log on the Zenith identifies her as Verbena. She was out here searching for what they call the asset, and she's a real entitled piece of work about it. She seems like the type that would be irritated for being asked to flush the toilet. And the other person on the line, some guy named Gerard, isn't much better. The Zenith sound like real dumpster fire people. There's no indication of what this asset is, though. It's like the rebels were camping in the area, watching it, waiting for the Zenith to show up. And the dead Oseram man, he had a focus, which was transmitting data to another unknown source. This was a weapons test. Varl found one hell of a hole dug deep into the mountain. Whatever dug it out was massive. She and Varl go down while Aaron stands up here to watch. The asset that the Zenith was talking about might be down there. Turns out, this was once a Far Zenith research lab. If Aletheia was here, chances are she's gone now. There's evidence of data being sent out from a strange device, but no sign of whoever sent it. Within the facility, studies into gene therapy, elongating lifespans, and digital transcendence were done here. Things that those aboard the Odyssey continued once they left Earth. This is where the baby steps began. There's a console in the main chamber that takes a 3-digit code. Putting in a number pulls up an ectogenic chamber. They're all empty, except that SOS transmission had a number, 237. Aloy puts that in and discovers what the so-called asset is, Beta. She sent the SOS to Gaia, created a message specifically for Aloy, and hid herself in one of the random chambers so the Zenith couldn't find her. She left a holo video message for Aloy, and she says that she was hoping to find shelter with her, and that she needs to be extremely careful of the Zenith. They have Artemis, Aletheia, and Apollo. But Beta stole the Gaia root kernel. They have nothing to merge them with. This young woman, Beta, she's thwarted the Zenith in a most cunning way. Without that Gaia kernel, they're at a distinct disadvantage. Erend calls down that 2 specters, machines that serve the Zenith, just dropped in from the sky, and one of them is en route. Aloy and Varl will not leave Beta behind. Varl takes the unconscious young woman to safety, and Aloy dispatches the specter. There's still one more on the surface that Erend is struggling against, so she leaves Varl and Beta in the safety of the facility to go up and aid him. The second specter has dug itself in like a machine gun from hell, and it's locked onto Erend. No wonder he couldn't make any headway on it. The 2 of them are able to break its siege and bring it down. Once the clear is given, Varl brings Beta up to the surface. She's going to be literally out cold for a long while, and she's going to need medical treatment as she wakes up. Varl and Erend will get her back to the base while Aloy further investigates these specters, anything that was left inside the research facility, and that weapon that the rebels had. It was far too hot for her to touch it after it exploded, but it's cooled enough now for her to poke at it. It's so charred and burned that its parts crumble when touched. The only thing she can take from it is a weird orb. Her best bet is just letting Gaia analyze it. Back at the base, things are peaceful. Varl is hanging out with Beta, helping her get comfortable. Zoe has been learning more about machines and the roles they played during the reconstruction of the world, back when Gaia was whole. Everything served a purpose, even the things that she was scared of as a child. With the help of Zoe and Varl, Erend has been making strides with his focus as well. He's learning that his preconceived notions of the Tenakth were incorrect, as Qtalo has proven them all to be wrong. He's still trying to grasp that there are 2 of her, though. That has him a little bit freaked out. And Qtalo himself is proving to be a quick learner. He accepts things at face value, inquires about things he doesn't understand, acknowledges that he too was incorrect about his preconceived notions of other tribes, and accepts when something isn't yet within his grasp. Nothing really riles him up or upsets him, and he really seems to like chocolate frosting, which pretty much makes him the perfect man. Beta is having a hard time of things. She's going through withdrawal. Removing her neurological implant has made her sick. Everything around her doesn't feel real. Her brain is having trouble processing the world. A focus is able to help her with it, though. It will aid in getting through the implant withdrawal. At least with that, she can function. Beta and Aloy are genetically the same, but they're far different personalities. They've lived very different lives. Beta is better seen as a unique person, all her own, not just Aloy number 2. In fact, Aloy is probably a little bit older than Beta. They're closer to being siblings than copies of each other. Not long ago, Aloy had referred to her as the clone, but now she calls her by her name and speaks to her like a companion. The 2 immediately start divulging information. Beta tells her what she knows of the Zenith and where they come from. These strangers aren't descendants of the people who left Earth. They are the people who left Earth. Beta was made on the Odyssey after the Sirius colony was destroyed. She thinks by a natural disaster. Her entire life was dedicated to learning how to access and control the terraforming systems on Earth. She doesn't know precisely what they want. She was treated like a machine, like an object, an asset. She thinks they want to wipe Earth clean and start over, create their own new world. Beta explains that she's seen the Zenith butcher entire tribes. They do not value life. They only care for themselves. They seem to have zero interest in Earth and its current viability, so they want to make a new one. But if they don't have Beta, they don't have Elizabeth Sobek's genetic code. They won't be able to control Gaia. Beta was only ever taken outside when she was in a Spectre drone. She wasn't allowed to see the world as they traveled. She's not even sure how many Zenith there actually are. She thinks they may have a setup in a base somewhere on the west coast, but she heard them talking about security measures that they would take with it. It would be nigh impregnable. She tells Aloy about how she fooled the Zenith into letting her have the Gaia root kernel to capture Eleuthia, how she slipped away from Verbena and hid in that ectogenic chamber. Pretty smart and bold plan that she pulled off all by herself. She's fascinated that someone was able to destroy Verbena's shield, and Aloy is intrigued by the existence of Apollo on the Odyssey. They have so much to learn from one another, but for being so different, they share a stubborn impatience. Hearing that they don't have control of Hephaestus, that Gaia isn't already creating an army to fight the Zenith causes Beta to panic. She lashes out over how far behind they are and breaks down over the Zenith finding her and taking her away. Aloy snaps back, tells her to calm down, and then backs off, makes her figure out a way that she'll be useful to take her out of her nosedive, and then makes her exit. Welcome to having siblings, Aloy. Varl and Zoe seem far better suited to handle Beta right now, better than Aloy. They'll give her space and try again later with her, once they've seen Aloy off to her next destination. She has a lot to talk about with Gaia before that can happen, though. The AI scans that sphere that Aloy took from that weapon and can put together that it is Zenith technology, but it's not being used how it was intended. As soon as the weapon malfunctioned, a command was executed that purged all data from this core. Someone had the foresight to ensure that this tech wouldn't fall into enemy hands. It reeks of Sylens. He's been playing Puppet Master this entire time, to an enraging degree. Stealing Hades, enabling the rebels, and now building anti-Zenith weapons with their own tech. And while it's unfortunate that the Zenith have Artemis, Eleuthia, and Apollo, it doesn't change their current mission. Poseidon and Demeter are still out there, as is Hephaestus. Before Aloy goes, Gaia reminds her that Beta is here because she fought back just like Aloy did. And while she may have overestimated their progress, she believes in what they're doing. She's been through so much, just give her time. Next up on the AIs to bring home is Demeter. The coordinates to Demeter lead Aloy into a heavily forested region. It's peaceful, lovely, nigh pristine, until she finds Tenakth corpses, a lot of them. Would Regala's rebels really be out this far? Her coordinates lead her to an old hollowed-out ruin, and almost immediately she's fired upon by people wearing armor that she doesn't recognize. In hopes that this is just a mistake, she calls out a request to hold fire, but it doesn't work. And in defense of what she is about to do, they did fire first. She kills her way through the building. These people are called the Quen, but she's never heard of this tribe before. This ruin was called the Greenhouse, a research facility owned by Ted Faro. Biotechnology research, environmental cleanup, and organic waste management. On the surface, another green Faro facility dedicated to the renewal of the Earth. But something pivotal to the ending of the world was created here. Biomass conversion. It's what gave the swarm the ability to consume organic material. Infinite food for infinite machines, right? Demeter isn't hard to find, but it has securely blocked off its doors with some wicked vines and metal flowers that she doesn't have the tools to cut through. Hopefully she can find a solution for this within this facility. During the Faro Plague, they were developing something called an adamantite wreath here. A hologram says that Test Station Ivy will have the final result of their work, but it doesn't define what the wreath actually is. She'll have to go to Test Station Ivy, but these Quen are vicious. They want to protect this site, but had they just talked to Aloy, they might have been able to work together. After clearing an entire courtyard of them, she finds one of them alone, but this one is different. It's a young woman, not clad in armor, who very much doesn't want to fight. And she's wearing a focus. It's like friendship at first sight. Her words don't make a lot of sense. It's like she's talking in well-rehearsed religious riddle. But this is Alva, and she is a diviner of the Quen. The Quen came from across the Pacific Ocean, possibly from what we would know as China. Storms and droughts have been destroying their homeland, so they sailed the ocean in hopes of finding some sort of salvation to take back. They made landfall at San Francisco, but since their arrival, they've not found any answers. As a diviner, Alva is dedicated to studying the Old Ones and interpreting their words for the betterment of all. They call it the legacy. Back in her homeland, other tribes were aggressive towards the Quen, and they were led to believe the same thing would happen here. It's a dangerous mentality to bring into the Forbidden West. Perhaps their interpretations of the legacy in that regard were incorrect. If Aloy can get into Test Station Ivy, they might find something that they can both use. So, time for a bit of teaming up. At a file storage bank, there are logs that Alva can't see but Aloy can. Her focus is an early model. It won't be able to see anything made past the mid-2050s, but Aloy offers to share that information with her. The swipe of her hand sends the data over to Alva, and she's able to see what was once lost and forbidden. Alva hasn't been able to get deeper into the complex because her focus couldn't read the data on access panels to open the way forward, but Aloy totally can, and she shows some personal growth. She doesn't try to ditch Alva, she invites her to come along. They chat a bit through the tunnels, just some easy conversation. Alva promises that her people aren't ruthless like the guards were with her. They seemed particularly barbaric during this mission, and she dreaded the thought of being around them anymore. They spend the day slowly making their way through the ruins together. Though she's not combat ready, Alva proves herself to be a highly capable travel companion. Without her help operating consoles, Aloy would have struggled to find solutions for some of these obstacles. In a building near Test Station Ivy, they figure out what the Adamantite Wreath project was, a response to the biomass conversion abilities of the Faro plague. They wanted to create something that the machines couldn't eat, something that could possibly kill or slow the swarm if consumed. They get a front-row demonstration of what the swarm did in a contained proving area and how the wreath was supposed to function. But it was created far too late. It wasn't effectively deployed. It wouldn't have stopped the swarm in time. Even if it had, it would have been inevitably hacked by the swarm long before it was contained. Aloy starts to tell Alva a bit about it, and surprisingly, she's not interested. That's forbidden knowledge. It's not why she's here. She's trying to find something to save her people, not learn about the sins of the Old Ones. Furthermore, if she doesn't find something to take back, the overseers of the Quen will punish her. Lives depend on her, and she's far more concerned with the living than the long dead. It's a stark contrast to Aloy, who has spent more time amongst the memories of the dead than walking beside the living. But at the heart of it all, they're working towards the same goal. Aloy promises that if they can succeed here, then Alva's people too could be saved. And though Alva doesn't quite understand, she accepts Aloy's reassurance. They're going to find something for her to take back to her people as proof of it. They just need to get into Test Station Ivy and reach Demeter. That adamantite wreath might be her solution to getting past those vines and metal flowers that Demeter created. The research accomplished here was so very close to being a salvation. Time just wasn't on their side. Test Station Ivy has kept safe records which relay that sorrow and guilt. Aloy finds a schematic for creating her special vine cutter, a software that will trigger the release of an enzyme within the flower, causing it to consume itself. It's how the Old Ones had hoped to reclaim the world after the wreath stopped the swarm. Cover the surface in adamantite wreath, starve out the swarm, and then destroy the wreath and take back the surface. With this new tech in her arsenal, Aloy can finally get through to Demeter. They hoof it back to the data core center together, and thank goodness it works. The vines fall away. Demeter has been isolated and afraid, just like Minerva and Aether were. Hearing that they're going back home, returning to Gaia is highly agreeable to Demeter. This is a good day. Demeter's code is restored and they're loaded onto the storage device. It doesn't have to be alone anymore. And Alva gets to have access to the data core, every bit of knowledge still contained throughout the facility. It's hundreds of archives related to agriculture, a jackpot of information that she'll get to take back to her people. Speaking of, more Quen soldiers have arrived. They've tracked Alva down with the intention of saving her. They fire on Aloy, but Alva's intervention halts them. Alva plays a hand that shows just how cunning she is. She knew full well from the beginning who Elizabeth Sobek was and that Aloy looks just like her, an ancestor reborn. But she didn't say anything. Alva presents Aloy as an honored presence that was unjustly fired upon by those who were blind. The Quen lower their weapons, see that Alva speaks the truth, and honor Aloy's presence. There will be no more fighting with the Quen, thank goodness. Alva deigns that they part ways here. She must take this data back to her people, and she wants Aloy to succeed in her ultimate goal. It's the best hope her people have, and if Aloy sticks around, the guards might decide they want to take her back to the camp for questioning. Probably for the best that she disappears before they start getting ideas. Alva tells Aloy where she can find her should she wish to meet with her again, but for now, they depart each other's company as friends. Aloy wastes no time in getting back to the base with Demeter. She stops to see all her companions to check on their progress, hear about what they've learned since the last time she saw them. All has been well. Each of them is making strides in different ways and taking wonderfully to the second site of a focus. Demeter's restoration will allow Gaia to curtail the blight latched into the soil in the region, but without the machines of Hephaestus, immediate crop restoration is unlikely. Zoe is working on a solution for it, however. With Aloy's help and a whole lot of grit, they can get the Utaru farming again and ease the food scarcity plaguing them just a little bit. Aloy's next AI target is the mighty Poseidon. He's hidden away someplace in the city once known as Las Vegas, but she checks in with Beta and Faro before heading out. Apparently, Beta has some spicy information to share. Faro has become a calming friend, someone that Beta is slowly opening up to. She told him about one of the Zenith, a woman who's quite different from the others, Tilda Vandermeer. Beta grew up extremely isolated with only AI and machines to tend to her. She only knew the Zenith as her benefactors. She was told that if she learned enough about the terraforming systems on Earth, then she would get to meet them one day. Once upon a time, during her training, a data channel was opened into her training interface. It took her to a virtual replica of a house on a cliff, where Tilda Vandermeer was waiting for her. She showed Beta art, books, previously forbidden files. Tilda had conversations with Beta and became her friend. Beta especially enjoyed video clips, TV shows, and holos that Tilda let her watch. But after a few months, Tilda never came back. Aloy shares that Tilda was extremely close to Elizabeth, but Beta doesn't know anything about that, or why Tilda suddenly stopped visiting her. She thinks it was because she did something wrong, and when Beta finally did meet the Zenith, Tilda acted like she didn't know her. She ignored Beta. It's something that clearly still upsets Beta deeply, so Aloy stops the conversation there and leaves. She's quite incapable of coping with Beta's pessimism and mood swings. Varl is a good buffer between these two. He approaches them both with empathy and understanding. And, just like Gaia, says to give Beta time to adjust. She's fighting a far different internal battle than Aloy. It's something that none of them can really understand. In fact, Gaia herself explains to Aloy how deeply emotionally damaging it was to Beta when she lost her supposed friend. When Tilda pretended to not know her in front of the other Zeniths, it was a rejection. It deepened that wound. Aloy wants Beta to act like she does, to be stronger, to just work through it, but that's not fair to Beta. That's enough family drama for now. Next stop, Sin City. Sandstorms and scorching heat plague these lands. Kind of a strange place for Poseidon to be hiding. But he seems to be in the heart of Las Vegas, someplace underground. Her first clue that he's near is water pouring out of a building. Not very subtle, Poseidon. Inside are 3 Oseram men arguing over something in the waters. One of them is intent on fetching something in the apparent depths under the sand. One is absolutely opposed to it, and the third just seems content summarizing their interaction through storytelling, like he's reading a storybook. He is the ever-cheerful wordsmith, Stemmer. Together they make quite an odd trio. The first man, Morland, has been trying to build a breathing apparatus because there's a city beneath the sands he's been trying to explore, but each prototype he's created has failed. They bounce some ideas off of each other for the next prototype, but Oseram man number 2, Abadund, takes issue with it. Morland has gotten himself nearly killed twice now, and this lady is a stranger, but after trading names, she's not a stranger anymore, right? Morland is hunting for what he calls embers, hollow projectors that play beautiful light shows. Human beings in motion, strange creatures never seen before, buffets and feasts, ocean animals swimming through the air. It's the sort of thing that these people could only dream of. He wants to collect as many as possible to share these light shows with others, as was the dream of his grandfather before him. The city beneath the sands wasn't always flooded. This trio had been exploring it when suddenly all the images changed. They became sea life. Poseidon had arrived, and these pictures suited him more than images of gambling and games. Then the waters came soon after. He'd created his own little kingdom beneath the sands to hide in. Aloy offers that if Morland can create a functional breathing apparatus, then she'll go into the underwater city and end the flood. She has business down there anyway, so they can help each other out on this one. Aloy checks out to collect parts from machines in the desert, dives into deep water to collect the pieces that he lost, and Morland puts it all together to create a real functional diving mask. He tells her where they saw the water rush in from, of a red light flashing near it that looked like a beacon. That might just be where she'll find Poseidon down there. His diving mask thankfully works like a charm. She can breathe just fine. During the climate crisis in the old world, Las Vegas had become uninhabitable. The heat was bad enough, but there was a water shortage that brought the city to its knees. A man named Stanley Quen had once tried to design a water filtration system, but he failed to sell the idea. His ideas were leaked to competitors, and Stanley lost almost everything he had. He'd come to Vegas and bet all the money he had left on a roulette wheel. It was a gamble that he won. Stanley walked away with $3.2 million. He invested it into his own water filtration system, and within 5 years, he was one of the wealthiest men in the world. His love for Vegas motivated him to try saving the city. He worked to solve the water crisis, and it revitalized the city. Stanley Quen was invited to join Far Zenith and was one of the few to have a seat on the Odyssey. Shutting down the fountains and water shows before he left was a truly sad moment for him. The Earth was doomed. There was no one left to watch them anyways. He left his water filtration system running, though, in hopes that one day it could help the future. Quen died during the collapse of Sirius, another victim of Nemesis. He would have been proud to know that his water filtration system was indeed still functional. Aloy finds a water control console and pumps the water out of the building. A particularly wily sea machine that was far too dangerous to approach is a bit more contained. Their lesser mobility means Aloy might stand a chance against them. She definitely would have been fish food had she tried to fight them in deep waters on their home turf. The three Oseram delvers are so eager to see what's down here that they rush in as soon as the water has receded, but this is good. They can help her take this thing down. It is a beautiful machine. Unfortunate that it's so aggressive, though. And it's tanky as hell. With it destroyed, she and the three Oseram have run of this place. They can start collecting their light show embers, and she can go back to tracking down Poseidon. And he's not too far away. He hasn't put up barriers or blockades. He doesn't try to tell her to leave or shut her out from his console. Aloy finds him in the data storage room and tells Poseidon that she's here to take him home. He is agreeable to this. All waters lead back to the mother. With Poseidon restored and safely uploaded into the Gaia kernel, they'll have all they need to capture their biggest prize, Hephaestus. Before she leaves the desert, there is something wonderful to see. Morland, Stemmer, and Abaddon have set up the embers, and a marvelous light show is playing. A dragon soars through the skies, gorgeous buildings made of light, colors glimmer all about, and this is just the beginning. They are going to stay here to make the city their stage, and one day, people from all over will come here to witness the wonders of Las Vegas, just like they did 1,000 years ago. With Poseidon back home, Gaia's heuristic processing density has been expanded enough that they can seek out Hephaestus. In Aloy's absence, a plan to capture him has been made. Because he's grown so much and become so rampant, Hephaestus cannot be contained in the Gaia kernel. Their best bet is to contain him within a location with 2 data cores that Gaia can directly connect to. There is a partially completed cauldron called Gemini to the west in Tenakth territory, and that will suffice. They'll have to physically take Gaia there for it to work, but she has created a blueprint for a device that can hold her. She'll reside in one data core, then call Hephaestus to the other, where she will trap and absorb him. There is a big issue with this, though. 2, actually. The first being, Minerva is able to conceal Gaia's location here, but she won't be able to do it within the cauldron. Gaia absorbing Hephaestus will make one hell of a power surge, and the Zenith will surely see it. Their best bet will be to create several power surges in other cauldrons, to distract and confuse the Zenith. Erend, Zoe, and Katalo will travel out to other cauldrons, and each will cause power surges at the same time. Gaia's success will be a roll of the dice, but it's worth the risk. The second issue is, Hephaestus has learned to override their alpha clearance. Anything they try to do to him, he will supersede with his own commands. But the ever-paranoid narcissist Ted Faro had created his own clearance, Omega. It's how he was able to murder all the Alphas and delete Apollo after they finished Gaia. Ted had his own bunker called Thebes. His Omega clearance might still be there. No one knew exactly where it was, though. It was speculated to be somewhere near San Francisco. The Quen had set up their base near San Fran, and their mission was entirely based around seeking out hidden locations and old-world knowledge. The diviner Alva may have more information on hidden bunkers in the area. The Quen could possibly help her out. Beta will build pulse generators for the power surges, Varl will gather resources for her, and Aloy will go all the way west to the sunny beaches of California. But before she heads off, she does her check-ins, and Qtalo has a request. He has learned that the Zenith would fuse metal and flesh to strengthen themselves, and he's wondering if the same can be done for him. And would she help him get the materials for it? Gaia told him that she would make it if he brings her the resources and the data needed. Everything needed should be at that Far Zenith research facility where they got Beta, and this is worth the detour. She decides to journey with Qtalo to that facility before going all the way west. This is a quick in and out. They want to download the relevant information needed from the database in the main chamber room and then get the hell out of here. The Zenith may still be monitoring the place, and they would like to be gone before anyone potentially notices them lurking about. The only immediate resistance they find are machines collecting scrap on the surface, but the facility itself is completely quiet. They're able to get back into that chamber with no issues. Once the data starts downloading to Qtalo's focus, though, Zenith Spectres drop in. Even two seasoned fighters struggle to bring them down. It feels like a fight that just goes on and on. As soon as the data is downloaded, she rushes for the components on the second floor while Qtalo keeps watch. When she has what's needed, Qtalo takes it and returns to base immediately, so that she can continue her own ventures in the West. The prospect of being able to build artificial limbs is exciting. It would benefit so many. Qtalo is breaking new ground, and soon he'll be in the testing phases. Her path west takes her through Chief Hikaro's territory, where she is more than welcome to dwell. She helps with getting defenses back up, and hears tell of the Sons of Prometheus causing problems. She's heard of them before. They're allies of the Tenakth rebels. She takes another little detour to look into it, investigate who exactly they are, and surprisingly, they're Oseram rebels. They came here to work alongside Regala for very similar reasons to hers. After what they went through during the Red Raids, they rejected the new Sun King Avad. They had been the mechanical and technological backbone behind the rebels, no doubt enabled by Sylens himself. Some of them even have focuses. She clears out one of their camps, destroys all the override equipment there, which should greatly slow down Regala's progress in the region, and she takes one of the focuses with her. She would like to have a chat with whoever is watching through them. She clears out more of their camps, reclaims ground for the Tenakth, and really digs in her heel to send a message. Then she finds undeniable proof of Sylens' involvement. Their leader speaks of him by name over a recorded message, and they don't seem very fond of him. She gets the focus back to base, hacks the encryption on it, and gives Sylens a call. He's not surprised or fazed to hear from her. He knew that the Zeniths turned out to be bad news, that she survived the encounter and has been destroying rebel camps. He advises her to stop doing that. But Sylens hasn't really garnered much goodwill, and this is the second time that he has stoked a tribal civil war. Except this time, his excuse is, "Just trust me, bro, I know what I'm doing." It's not gonna fly. It's actually a bit insulting at this point. He ends their conversation with know-it-all who vaguely alludes to grave danger, all the while not actually saying anything concrete or of value, douchebaggery. And then he destroys the focus. Pretty safe to say that Sylens isn't playing for any particular team. He doesn't care if it costs lives to get what he wants, and he's becoming more dangerous by the day. Well, how about Aloy plays her own game? She goes back to Tenakth territory, learns that the Sons of Prometheus is led by a woman named Asera, and she starts wrecking them. She learns about the old world weapons they were trying to recreate, blows out a bunker, kills everyone she comes across, and learns the name of their base of operations, First Forge. She has a chat with Erend about it, and he knows all about who Asera is, and where First Forge is located. He tells her of Asera's madness brought on by the horrors of the Red Raids. She went through terrible things, but perpetuating the cycle of violence during peace talks with new leadership cannot be allowed. It's made all the more complicated by her being a part of the group that killed Erin's sister. This has to stop. Eren is going with her. He has every right to be a part of this. The two of them rendezvous just outside of First Forge, but it's immediately apparent that there's a problem here. Their base is inside a mountain, and there's only one way in, so they're going to have to go through a very guarded front door. Eren looks enough like them that he could probably pass himself off as a son of Prometheus, and he plays it like she's his prisoner. And it goes not too great. The guards have a real stranger danger sense about them, and their act isn't terribly convincing. So, Eren punches his way through and shuts the door behind him. Hopefully the guards don't wake up anytime soon. They maintain stealth for as long as possible, but Eren isn't the sneakiest of folk, and giant guns are really just a lot more fun than Sam Fishering your way through everything. They kill everything here, but there's no sign of Asera until she responds to Eren over a loudspeaker. She's watching them from someplace nearby. Asera baits them through the caverns, trying to drop things on them, trying to get them to walk through electrified tripwires. She's quite confident that she can handle both of them. She has a couple machines at her command, but her hubris will cost her everything. Even when her machines are destroyed, she continues to fight. Aloy and Eren kill Asera, leader of the Sons of Prometheus. This is another threat to the Tenakth dispatched, and it will be a grave loss to Regala. As for Eren, this is a bit of closure, though he's tired of all the fighting and the bloodshed. He's glad he could help, but the fatigue in his voice is apparent. He's going to go back to base, pick back up with his training, and she is finally to actually, really, definitively get back on the road for San Francisco. She has a bunker to find. Beautiful sunny California, and she doesn't have to worry about the taxes. Alva had told Aloy where she could find landfall, the Quen base. She'll have to find a way to cross some water, but it's not too far off, easily seen from shore. She finds sign of the Quen on the beach, but there's no sign of the Quen themselves. It's strangely really quiet here. She commandeers one of their boats, makes it to the other side of the shore on her own, but it's really quiet here too. There are signs that people were here recently. There's no signs of battle, no blood or bodies, so she'll just head northeast to Landfall, where Alva had said that they would be. Maybe they all just went back to Landfall and left their boats out. There aren't a lot of natural threats out here. Some machines, sure, but there aren't rebels or raiders. It's mostly just beaches, forests, and singing birds. The contained area makes it easy to find the Quen. The guards recognize Aloy, invite her approach, and inform her that someone named Overseer Bohai wants to meet her. The Overseer is not quite so willing to blindly trust her. He wants to know what she really is and what her intentions are before allowing her amongst his people. She has a bit of a spat with one of the soldiers over the Quen that she killed. They argue over whose fault it is, but a horn interrupts, signaling the arrival of someone of importance. He is known as the CEO, as in CEO. These people apparently think of themselves as the Chosen, which, yep, buckle up. They can't believe that a living ancestor wasn't born in their homeland, that she would be a savage. Bohai speaks as though they can see through any lie and demands that she tell them why she's here. Not so fun being on the other side of demanding personalities, is it? But she just deals with it. She tells them that she's looking for a place called Thebes. She intends to use whatever she finds there to heal the world. And yeah, they know where it is. They've already found it. But they can't get into the bunker. The way is closed to them. Alva is there right now, trying to find out how to open the doors, but there have been troubles with the machines in the area. The current excavation team is being held up by them, something that Aloy can help with. Come to find out, the Quen have been here for over a year, and they'd found Thebes right after landing. It rests beneath a pyramid. They believe it to be a grand underground palace, which really not surprising given the type of person that Ted Faro was. The leadership structure of the Quen seems to mix old world business terminology, tribal mentalities, and imperial titles. Bohai was chosen to be here by the Board of Overseers, and this other guy is apparently the cousin of the Emperor of the Quen, also the first CEO in 5 generations. Their ships are quite impressive though, and beautiful. It took 7 years to build their fleet. Their expedition across the ocean was seen as the most important undertaking of their generation. This CO only wants to get into that bunker, so she has their permission to approach and aid the expedition at Thebes. His motivations are a little off-putting, though. Alva brought back a treasure trove of data from the Faro facility. What more could they want? The machine that had been badgering the expedition is a black armor-plated Apex Thunderdraw. Nasty bit of work. Thankfully, they had built walls around the entrance to Thebes to safeguard their efforts, but they haven't been able to leave to resupply for a while now. Killing this thing grants her their gratitude, and hearing that the CO sent her grants her passage. It is good to see Alva again. She has been doing just fine in their time apart. Aloy asks her what the hell the CO is so interested in within this bunker, and she says that he's obsessed with faster results. She tries to warn Aloy about him, but Bohai and the CO himself interrupt them as though on cue. The excavation to the door of Thebes is pretty impressive. It's really deep into the ground and required pumping out huge amounts of water to access it. The front door is gene-coded to only open for Ted Faro himself, no one else, not even Elizabeth Sobek. The CO keeps mentioning Elizabeth's role in their legacy story as though she were some sort of a religious figure, or part of some creepy prophecy that they're waiting to be repeated. Aloy's insistence that she can't open this door turns the CO's anger against Overseer Bohai. Aloy is supposed to be like Sobek. Why isn't she like Sobek like he thought she would be? Alva is able to step in to defuse it. There are tunnels deep underwater that the Quen haven't been able to reach, perhaps used during construction or for servants of Ted Faro. Aloy has that diving mask so she can reach it. This is just further proof that she is an ancestor reborn. For with Sobek, there is always a way or something, I don't know. These people are exhausting. Thebes was built over what looks like a lava bed. The water is warm and everything down here has remained relatively intact. The only opening in the structure is a burst pipe on the complex underbelly. The old flooded maintenance tunnel leads up into an exercise room. There's a datapad from someone named Kanya Sompdow. She sounded young and was quite upset about the death of someone in Thebes. This facility is absolutely massive. There must have been several people that lived here, right? Well, as Aloy goes, she discovers that the people of Thebes were almost all here in service to Faro. A doctor and his daughter, a spiritual leader, and concubines. Ted became obsessed with self-preservation and gaining immortality. He was so paranoid of the people around him that he had kill switches put into everyone's heads without their knowledge. Once the guru found out about Ted killing the Alphas, the murders began. One by one, very slowly, Ted Faro killed his way through Thebes. His doctor had developed a gene therapy to greatly elongate Ted's life, but it had complications. It caused gene mutations that had to be treated before he could continue. Before the therapy was perfected, the doctor and his daughter chose to end their lives to get away from Faro and the clearly hopeless lives they were going to suffer through with him. Faro seemed confident that the gene therapy was working and that he was going to live forever. The weirdness escalates once she gets the front door open for the Quen. The CO has been preparing himself to enter Thebes. He exits his waiting room without his man Shaw, looking a lot like Ted Faro, waving his arms to the room like he's Miss America on tour. He announces that he is Ted Faro renewed, just like she is Elizabeth Sobek renewed. The same soul, the same will. The only separation between the CO and Faro is knowledge of his final testament, which he thinks will be Ted Faro's deepest secrets. This will give him what he needs to save his homeland and then the world. Sobek was Faro's assistant, so Aloy will dress as Sobek and do the same for him. Well, hopefully Aloy likes dressing like the dude because this megalomaniac is deeply into his cosplay. She will dress like Sobek or violence will begin. As much as she doesn't want to wear a sweater, it's not worth starting a war with the Quen over. And she doesn't want Alva to be hurt, so she puts on the stupid clothes. Ted Faro had the foresight and ego to create Thebes for the future. When life was restored, when humanity returned, when his underground palace was found, those who came here would see monuments to Faro cast in gold. He would seem as a god amongst them, a living, immortal deity, not like they would have Apollo to teach them old world histories to tell them otherwise. Aloy slowly finds out the full extent of what happened here via audio and text logs. The things that Ted Faro did would challenge or destroy the CO's beliefs, and he doesn't seem like somebody who likes to be challenged. He seems the sort to turn dangerous if confronted, so she just keeps it to herself. But of concern is knowing that Ted Faro rigged Thebes to melt down should he die, and, well, Thebes is clearly intact. And that must be why it was built over a lava bed. It'll be pumped into Thebes if Faro dies. So, where is Ted? Farther into Thebes are the more sensitive aspects of Faro's legacy, things that he would want protected, of course. They find a medical wing where Faro's doctor ran gene therapy experiments and treated Ted's mutations. For being one man, the doctor did amazing work developing immortality, even if it was full of errors and failures. He feared what Ted would do to him if he didn't produce results, and he had his daughter to worry over. This place was a prison. Aloy does tell the Quen that Faro was trying to achieve medical immortality, but the CO finds this to be a laughable theory. After all, if Ted Faro were still alive, then how could his essence, his very soul, have been passed on to the CO? I mean, what the hell happened to this CO that he thinks he has the soul of Ted Faro within him? Wishful thinking turned self-delusion? Quen stories turn self-delusion, self-delusions making self-delusions. He calls Faro a renewer, a selfless being that did nothing for himself. It was all to create a new beginning. It's like calling Scientology a philanthropic organization. This was, of course, the complete opposite of what Faro was. How would the CO react if he knew that good old Ted literally caused the end of the world? There are locked doors which can't be forced open, and it gives Aloy a chance to go ahead through the vents, gives her a few minutes of privacy in new rooms to check things out, and in one such room, she finds the Omega clearance and an archive of Ted's records. His last log is about the death of the doctor and the doctor's daughter. Ted pitied himself over their deaths. He viewed it as a betrayal. Everything was about him, after all. Ted was confident that he could handle any mutations that the gene therapy threw at him, and that he would live long enough to greet the remade world as a savior figure. One day, humanity would welcome him, and he would greet them. They're going to need him, after all. There's an odd banging sound coming from behind a locked door nearby, and there shouldn't be anyone here. Machines probably wouldn't be making that kind of a ruckus. Aloy opens a map of what's in there, and some sort of a living mass is definitely in the reactor room. It's all over the reactor room, actually, and it's screaming. The CO's men get the door open, and he demands to know if Ted's secrets are here. I mean, I guess it depends on your perspective, but there are definitely some howling Faro secrets all over the next room. And the CO would like to see them. Well, you know, he's a grown boy, and if that's really what he wants, then by all means. The CO opens the door, walks down the hall, lasts about 10 seconds before retreating back. He just got an eyeball of Faro, and his world is imploding on itself. He orders it to be burned. Aloy warns him that killing Faro will trigger a meltdown of this facility, but he is just fine with that. He orders that Aloy and Alva be killed too. No witnesses. As the facility is flooded with lava, they fight their way through Quen's soldiers that lack self-preservation. Fires start to break out, the walls crumble, the ceilings cave in, Thebes is falling. The CO bolts for the exit, pushing everyone out of his way with a veracity that would make Ted Faro himself proud. It doesn't save him, though. The CO lacks the speed to escape the inferno. If only he had listened. He is crushed by the oversized head of the man that he so worshipped. The only ones who make it out are Aloy and Alva. Overseer Bohai had returned to the surface during their exploration and demands to know where the CO is. Alva tells him that he gave his life to uncover the secrets of Thebes, which isn't technically a lie, right? Technically? Bohai sees through it, though, and he's perfectly fine with the CO's death. As he says, he was an entitled egotist with twisted beliefs. Good riddance. But he's not going to give them a pass. He wants to know exactly what happened down there. So, Aloy lays it out. The CO caused the cave-in and died like a coward. They found the data that will help save the Quen. It'll help save everyone. And this is a far more believable tale than the CO sacrificing himself for the betterment of mankind. Bohai accepts this and recognizes that the fate of all is intertwined. His stipulation for aiding her and offering her free use of their settlement is this: Alva must accompany her. She must leave Landfall and keep the Quen up to date on Aloy's mission. Really twisting Aloy's arm on this one, Alva will be a wonderful addition to the team back at base. Varl will come out to meet Alva to escort her back. She'll get a new focus and access to all the data she could ever want, and she gets to meet Gaia. Aloy gets back to the base not long after Varl and Alva. Now that she has Omega clearance, they can capture Hephaestus. As expected, Alva has taken to the technology at the base like a fish to water. She's absorbing every bit of information she can. She tells Aloy that during the voyage across the ocean, part of the Quen's fleet was lost during storms. Others died from illness or starvation. They've had a really hard time of everything, but refuse to give up due to the dire situation in their homeland. The CEO's desperation to be the one who saved his people, to gain the Emperor's favor, turned into an obsession over Ted Faro's legacy, and he became a bit of a madman. Overseer Bohai is a self-serving asshole who will steal credit for discoveries others made, but at least he's not the CEO. Gaia greets Aloy with bad news, or rather, a complication. Hephaestus has been expanding itself through the Cauldron network, becoming stronger. She can still contain him, but it will take a great deal of time. 35 hours, she estimates. That's way too long. It's way too risky. Together, they figure out that if there are 2 Elizabeth Sobeks, both with Omega clearance, one at each data core, they could clean up Hephaestus's corrupted data much faster. It could reduce the processing time to about 4.5 hours. It will require taking Beta out of the base, putting her in potential danger should the Zenith show up. That's something that she will be resistant to. She's still so afraid of the Zenith and this new world all around her. Aloy calls Varl to see if he'll speak with Beta about it, and he does agree, but he calls back a minute later telling Aloy that Beta is having a meltdown. As kind of expected, the request immediately set her over the edge. Aloy goes in alone to try to have words with her, but Beta doesn't even want to answer questions. Aloy pries it out of her with some forceful questioning, and Beta lets out that she's terrified of going back. She's experienced freedom. She doesn't want to be enslaved by them again. Beta doesn't really know what it's like to have hope, or, well, positivity. She might be a brilliant mind, but she is still a teenager, and she lashes out like one. Aloy slaps back that genetically they're the same. They're both Elizabeth, so why is Beta so unwilling to find courage like Aloy and Elizabeth did? And Beta knows it. She understands that she's not like Aloy. She views her fear as her defect. She sees herself as defective. Aloy's pressuring isn't helping the situation, and she knows it. There is a great divide between them, though. Something Aloy had that Beta never did. Rost. He raised her as a father would and instilled skills, morals, and bravery into Aloy, completely separate from anything genetically linked back to Elizabeth Sobek. Rost wasn't a warm or loving figure outwardly, but he certainly loved Aloy and wanted what was best for her. She confesses that even now when things get bad, she hears Rost's voice and she finds strength in it. Beta never had a Rost. There's nothing defective about her. This walks her back, it calms her down, and it humanizes Aloy a bit more to Beta. She says that she'll go to the Cauldron to help, but asks Aloy to make her a promise. Don't let the Zenith take her back, implying that even if it means killing Beta should they fail. Beta swears that she'll be ready for the merge when the time comes. The pulse generators are all ready to go. Everyone has been studying and preparing to fight the Zenith. When Aloy gives the word, they're going to get Hephaestus. As Aloy has journeyed, so too have her companions. Zoe, in particular, has been working on mending the land gods of the Utaru. With Gaia's help, they've created a reboot sequence for them, and it's time to see it completed. As they're restored, the Utaru land gods make sounds, singing it seems. It's an odd collection of notes, but to the Utaru it might as well be a symphony. The land gods will soon return to tending the soil. There's a great deal of healing that needs to be done, but the hard part is over. Zoe must speak with the chorus to tell them what has happened, whether they like it or not. And Cthulhu, he's finally ready to test out his new arm. Aloy meets him in Tenakth territory, where they once fought that big mammoth machine. He leads her to a field where a machine menace has been hanging out. He wants to test it on that thing. Go big or go home, right? Not only does he have an intact dominant hand for weapon wielding, but now he has an offhand to straight up punch holes through things. Field test successful. But he doesn't wish to wear this new arm all the time. He has accepted what happened and he doesn't want to hide it. He'll use the arm as a tool, but he will not make it a part of himself. And Alva. She's been investigating a mystery. She believes that within the At Bay Research Center there's something called Leviathan. It's a flood control system that was developed in San Francisco, which was used in her homeland, but it is in need of repair. If Aloy can help her track down data on Leviathan at Bay HQ, it could save a lot of lives. Another diviner at landfall tells them where they can find At Bay, but he's nervous about something there, forbidden knowledge that could cause trouble that he would rather turn a blind eye towards. At Bay is in very poor condition and inhabited by another of those damned Cobra machines. Alva has proven to be quite the archer though, and doesn't need to be protected as they fight and search through the ruins. The two of them discover that the creator of Leviathan, an honored ancient one named Eileen Sasaki, worked alongside her father on a previous project called Almaramba. It was defective. It allowed bacteria growth in water supplies, and hundreds of people died because of it. She helped in covering it up by destroying the data. Real pieces of work. Alva has lost faith in the old ones. They've all proven to be selfish, ruthless, and amoral. Eileen Sasaki vowed to make Leviathan work as intended, this time without taking shortcuts. So maybe there is a chance of finding good data here. They do find Eileen Sasaki's files at the top of At Bay HQ, and it's at least a small relief that in the end, she tried to do what was right and make Leviathan correctly. She overthrew her father as CEO and started atoning for her sins. Those files will do a lot of good for the Quen, so Eileen has earned some redemption. It just took 1,000 years for it to happen. When all are gathered back at the base and ready to depart, Aloy fetches Gaia. They will all ride machines to their respective cauldrons. Zoe, Erend, Alva, and Katalo eventually have to break off to handle their tasks alone, while Beta, Varl, Aloy, and Gaia travel on to Gemini. Beta has spent so little time out in the living, breathing world, but now she gets a full countryside ride with an armed escort. The Gemini cauldron is quiet. Hephaestus isn't operating here, so they're able to connect Gaia to the data core with no issues. The other four activate their pulse generators at the other cauldrons, and for as long as they're active, it'll seem as though power surges are taking place. Hopefully, it will give them enough cover for Gaia to work. The Omega clearances are given at each data core, and Hephaestus responds to Gaia's presence. As soon as he's in the other data core, they sever outside connections, effectively trapping him in place, and Gaia starts her work. Hephaestus finds this to be unacceptable. He may not be able to escape the cauldron, but he can use it. He busts out of the data core and calls machines within the cauldron to defend himself. Thankfully, only a few respond with the initial call. Aloy has to chase Hephaestus down through the cauldron while Beta repairs the core that he cracked. Hephaestus is already using conveyor belts and carriers to haul materials into a production area. He's trying to make something. Her attempt to sever his connections to this cauldron's network prompts him to initiate countermeasures, but each connection she cuts off forces him closer to the main data core near Gaia, and there aren't many places he can hide himself away anyways. Every countermeasure he deploys sounds worse than the last. ZX Giga 9 autonomous defenses doesn't sound like it comes to parties with pizza and beer. Each connection he loses seems to make him more upset, more verbal and threatening. It's like he's getting a little bit tilted. The machine he was creating is the S Mark I, a slaughter spine with all the bells and whistles. By the time he's able to make it, he is down to his last hiding spot. Once that machine is down, Aloy shuts down his final connection and forces him back towards Gaia. Beta has repaired the data core and they can finally get this going. This time, Hephaestus doesn't fight. He doesn't even speak. The merger begins and the two Omega clearances start the process of cleaning up his malicious code. This is a process that will be done in 4.5 hours. They don't make it far into the process before the ceiling bursts open and 3 Zenith descend. Somehow they saw through the ruse. Aloy is quickly knocked off of her feet, and their resented leader Gerard orders the lumbering attack dog Eric to retrieve Beta and eliminate the other two. He may hate taking orders, but Eric is all too happy to maim and kill. Varl comes to her defense. Bringing down heavy machinery onto Eric is only a temporary stop. Their shields prevent harm, even 10 tons of it. Varl tries to hold him back, keep Beta safe, but none of them are equipped to stop this. He can't pierce the shield, and Eric runs him through. An immediate lethal blow. Varl has died, defending his friend, trying to save a world that he loved so much. And Beta, she's taken by the root. She had made Aloy promise to not let them take her, no matter what that meant, but Aloy doesn't have the heart to shoot. She's faced with the consuming pain of loss and failure as her world shatters. But a voice breaks through it, telling her to hush. Not all is lost. It's the woman, Tilda. She floods the cauldron with blinding light, overloads the senses of everyone around her, discharges a huge amount of energy, and Aloy's vision fades. When she finally reawakens, her first thought is of Beta, losing her, saving her, and then the memory of Varl. What will this do to Zoe? They were so in love. Varl was the heart of the group, the ever-stalwart friend and confidant. And where is she now? Tilda answers that via the focus. She reassures Aloy that they're safe here, undetectable, and that while Beta may be someplace that she doesn't want to be, she is alive and not in urgent danger. She is needed to merge Hephaestus and Gaia together, which will be a time-consuming process. The Zenith will not harm her. Tilda is going to help get her back. She invites Aloy to meet her for breakfast when she's ready. This was once Tilda's home and personal art gallery. She got her start 1,000 years ago creating software that detected art forgeries, which made her billions in the security sector. She kept them all safely locked away here, her favorite pieces. If Aloy wishes it, Tilda will tell her about them, the stories behind their creation, metaphors that she values, ingenious use of colors to evoke emotion, how she personally relates to some of the images. She did the same with Beta for a time, in virtual reality, before she suddenly cut her off without a word of explanation. When the two meet face to face, Aloy is all business. How did they find them at the cauldron? And, well, they were watching Hephaestus. Trapping him in that data core is how they knew what was happening. Their trick failed, but not for the reasons they might have expected. Hephaestus is a prize to be had, and now the Zenith have both him and Gaia. Tilda swears that the Zenith were never her people, especially now. She's not like them. In fact, she wants to stop them. She'd gotten one of Aloy's old broken focuses, and from it she extracted data about her life. Tilda was in love with Elizabeth, and she left her behind on Earth to go aboard the Odyssey. Now 1,000 years later, it's like she's speaking to her daughter. She would side with Aloy over the Zenith. But now comes, well, let's see if you can spot any manipulation. Tilda speaks of Gerard's intentions to use Gaia to reboot the Earth's biosphere, remake it for the Zenith, a clean install. But if they stop him together, then they can work to fulfill Elizabeth's dream for this world. The addition of Apollo to Gaia would make global education possible. Tilda confirms that the Zenith are not invincible, that Sylens has truly found a way to break their shields. She says that he intends to use Regalla's army against the Zenith base, once she's conquered the Tenakth and usurped Chief Hikaru's position. They would be completely wiped out in an attack on the Zenith, but it would give Sylens the time and distraction needed to kill the Zenith. Tilda says they could use such an attack to their advantage. While everyone's attention is elsewhere, they can go in through a back door to get Gaia and Beta. If interested, Tilda will tell Aloy about her strained relationship with the Zenith, how she met Elizabeth and what she was like in her personal life, leaving Earth, her supposed dreams for humanity, how she cared for Beta and was pained to cut her off. She seamlessly weaves the truth and lies together, as though she knows what Aloy would want to hear based on how much she idolizes Elizabeth Sobek. Never once does she mention Nemesis or what truly happened on Sirius. They spend a large part of the morning talking on that balcony, but Aloy can't agree with Tilda's plans, because it would mean sacrificing Hikaru to Regalla, letting the Tenakth die. The Zenith tries to equate the sacrifice of the tribe to Elizabeth's choice long ago. Sometimes many have to die for a new world to grow, she says. But Rost used to tell Aloy that if something looked impossible, then look deeper. She tells Tilda that she wants her to open a data channel to Beta. It would likely mean detection, but it's worth the risk if it means saving the Tenakth. Tilda's pushback is met with a demand to just open the damned channel. So, she does. Aloy can see Beta through it, see that she is suffering through something. The Zenith are forcing her to micromanage the merger between Hephaestus and Gaia, an extremely taxing process. But if she stops or resists, they'll run simulations on her that induce despair. She can still hear Aloy, though, and projects herself into the channel to speak with her. Aloy promises that she is going to save her, and whispers something to her that Tilda can't hear. Aloy and Beta are making plans that involve Hephaestus itself, but that's a nasty surprise for later. Beta says she can do it. So long as she knows Aloy is coming to get her, she can hold on through anything. Once Beta fades away, Tilda asks what they're planning, and Aloy tells her that they're going to take away Sylens' army and get the tech that he has for breaking the Zenith shields. She is going to destroy Regalla's rebellion and leave him with no choice but to cooperate with her. As for what she said to Beta, that's between her and her sister. Tilda lets it go, and gives her advice on how to royally mess up Regalla's army, using the electromagnetic energy cells within an old Horus Titan, and says that if Aloy can bring Sylens into compliance, then she'll meet with them back at their base in the mountains. But first, Varl. He deserves to be laid to rest. She calls Erend to tell him that she's alright and that she's coming back. He's clearly been worried sick. After their disappearance at Gemini, she just went dark. They know what happened to Varl. They brought him back to the base and have been deeply grieving his passing in their own ways. Erend is still trying to process it, Katala wants blood, and Zoe is ready for a fight. But they have no options before them other than to just throw themselves at an unbeatable enemy. When Aloy returns, she gives her attention first to Zoe. The grave singer tells her of their journey to Gemini and finding Varl, but his focus cut off when he was killed. They've had no idea of what happened to her, Gaia, or Beta. Aloy fills them in on what happened afterwards and the plan she has to stop the Zenith. Regalla's forces are assembling and plan to attack Memorial Grove. Kotalo must go. He has to be with his people to defend his chief. The rest of them will follow soon once their preparations for battle are made. Zoe first wishes to speak with Aloy in private, outside. A burial place for Varl has already been made, and it is beautiful. This was the garden that Zoe and Varl tended to together, a place of comfort and peace, a fitting place for him, where he can oversee Plainsong and Nora lands far to the east. Zoe never got the chance to tell him that she's pregnant. She'd planned to surprise him when he got back from Gemini. But one day, she will bring their child here to sit amongst the flowers and watch the sun rise, just like they used to. In a lone moment before his grave, Aloy promises that she will look after them. And just as she did after Rost passed away, Aloy will return here between ventures to sit at Varl's graveside, to talk to him, give him updates, and say all the things that she didn't get to say before. Aloy is going to override a Sunwing and attack Regalla's rebels by air. She makes an override and claims one as her own. She has her transportation. Next, she needs an energy cell from an old Horus Titan. Tilda gives her directions on how to activate them via the tall necks that roam the regions, and then they are ripe for the picking. She doesn't even have to dismount from the Sunwing to get it. And if she needs more energy cells, all she has to do is stop by any Horus Titan in the area and grab one. By the time she is over Memorial Grove, the fighting between the Tenakth and the rebels is underway. Regalla has brought every machine and soldier she has. There will be no more battles after this one. Aloy drops the energy cell right into the middle of the fighting, setting off a power surge that fries every machine in its radius. The bulk of Regalla's strength is wiped out in seconds. She herself didn't stay to fight alongside her soldiers. She took a small group and rushed for Hikaru. News that her machines have been destroyed puts her on a time limit. Her rebels will no longer stand a chance against the Tenakth. She has to end this quickly before reinforcements arrive. Aloy challenges her to one-on-one combat. This will be the end of things, and Regalla quickly agrees. None are allowed to interfere in this. Their fight takes place all around the arena of the Tenakth, beginning with melee combat and then becoming an all-out brawl once Regalla starts using tech alongside long-range weaponry. When she's bested at each round, she escalates her tactics, even using projectile explosives to get the upper hand. They end up in the arena itself, where the fight is wrangled in a bit. They both use their complete arsenal against the other on even ground. No more surprises. Regalla is soundly defeated once again. Yet, even in defeat, she refuses to concede anything. She would rather die than admit that she failed. Hikaru grants Aloy the right to decide what becomes of Regalla. He once decided to spare her, and it was one of his greatest mistakes. Aloy can choose to have her executed on the spot, sure, or she could use Regalla. Aloy decides that Regalla will die, but she will die in glorious combat against the Zenith. An honorable death, not one of defeat. The stipulation being that she doesn't betray Aloy or the Tenakth. Regalla gladly agrees to it. She might be a bit of a bastard, but she's not a liar. The Tenakth are finally free from this rebel threat. What few of them survive will no longer have a banner to fall under, and the Sons of Prometheus are no more. This civil war is done. An Oseram man enters Memorial Grove at the conclusion with something specifically for Aloy. He presents to her a focus from an interested party, he says. You get one guess as to who's on the other line. But before she takes that call, Aloy speaks with Hikaru. He wishes for the Tenakth to join her in the battle against the Zenith, which she declines. All of this was done to save the Tenakth. She won't sacrifice them as allies or as foes. She wants them to remain, to grow and heal, to become the vision that Hikaru has for them. And he accepts this. It would be a suicide mission for them. There's little the Tenakth can do to aid them now. He does gift her a set of armor before departing, though, to keep her safe in the battle to come. Now, to answer that call, Sylens is a little bit upset with her. She ruined his plans. Remember, Sylens knows about Nemesis and the true intentions of the Zenith. When he talks about dooming the planet, he's not exaggerating. His inability to cooperate, disclose, and be flexible has caused this whole situation, though. His current position is entirely his own fault. He wants the Zenith dead, not to save the world, but, well, they have a spaceship. Aloy brags that she still has a way to defeat them that doesn't include destroying an entire tribe of innocent people, which does catch his attention. But she'll only disclose it face to face, at their base in the mountains. If he wants victory, he has to play nice. Luckily, no one shivs Sylens as soon as he enters the base. Not even Erend. In fact, he lets him stay in Aloy's room, away from everyone else, quarantined. There is some bad blood between Aloy and Sylens. Neither is willing to concede that they were wrong, neither willing to tell the full story, both expecting the other to comply. Aloy does admit that she needs his help, but quickly follows it up with a promise of violence should he betray her. He accepts, but doesn't seem to take her threat very serious. Tilda Vandermeer has also arrived, just as she said she would. She wants to see this Zenith shield destroyer. Sylens is quite sure that it's completely functional and has enough output to destroy all the shields in one go, and he's willing to test it on Tilda if she doubts it. Neither of them like the other, and once this is through, there might be outright hostility between them. But for now, they'll both be staying at the base away from each other, away from everyone else. Not only are they pretty awful to anyone who isn't Aloy, but no one really wants them here anyways. Sylens being off-putting isn't surprising at all. He's difficult even for Aloy. Tilda, though, everyone gets an unnatural, discomforting vibe from her. Like looking at someone whose smile is just wrong, or whose stare is too harsh. She's perfectly human, but there's an uncanny valley about her. Yet when she speaks to Aloy, she's perfectly welcoming and easygoing. She tells her about her relationship with Elizabeth, the decline of that relationship. She views helping Aloy as a second chance to do something right by Elizabeth. Aloy tells Tilda that after their last conversation, when Tilda convinced Elizabeth to give Far Zenith that copy of Apollo after they tried to steal Gaia, after that conversation ended, Elizabeth said something. It sounded like regret for how things ended between them, that she was trying to let go. It's a comfort for Tilda, who felt that their last conversation was one of anger and rejection. Tilda tells Aloy that there are 10 Zenith in the base. She makes 11, Verbena was 12, but she doesn't disclose the 13th. Strange. Well, time to talk to Sylens. In private, he does finally come clean about his plans over the last few months. Well, all except what he's planning to do in regards to Nemesis. You know, the ultimate doomsday. If she hasn't learned about that yet, then he's not going to educate her. That wouldn't be advantageous. He says everything has been well planned in advance, even when the Zenith found her at the Hades Proving Ground. He claims that he knew they would be hostile and that it was his way of removing her from the equation so she wouldn't interfere with his plans. He thought they would use her, not kill her. He didn't realize they already had a clone of Elizabeth Sobek. Betrayal really seems to be the only language that he speaks. Once all preparations are made, all within the base gather where Gaia once stood for debriefing. Tilda lays out exactly where the base is, and she says that she can get them inside undetected, but she won't say how. She doesn't trust the room, and it's hard to blame her for it. Silence alone is reason enough to be tight-lipped. But their goal is a launch tower. They have a rendezvous point established. Private mission assignments are given out to trusted companions outside the company of Sylens and Tilda. Alva in particular is going to be prying into information on the Zeniths to dig up secrets that Tilda might be hiding. At the upcoming battle, she and Katala will be tasked with destroying the regulator that controls the Zenith machines. Without it, they'll be unable to receive commands from the Zenith. They've done all they can. Time to wrap up any loose ends they may have, and to get out west to take down the Zenith. The Zenith established their base on an island very close to the mainland, within walking distance, in fact. The secret entrance was concealed by Tilda herself. She found an old evacuation tunnel that went from the island to the shoreline and decided to hide it from the others, not that any of them would have bothered with it anyways. The island itself has a lot of flat land, which will make approaching the base tricky. What little cover there is behind rocks will be patrolled by specters. When it's in sight, the groups splinter off to take care of their tasks. Alva and Katalo go to the regulator, Regala and Zoe will provide backup and cover, Aloy and Aaron will go to the launch tower. Very little information is shared with Tilda or Sylens. Tilda will scramble their network to give them some cover, but it will only be temporary. And Sylens, well, who knows what he's going to actually go do. Aloy and Aaron will trek through the rock formations where specters are patrolling. Sneak or fight, it's up to them. By the time they reach the outskirts of the tower, Alva and Katalo have destroyed the regulator. The specters are wild now. What happens next is entirely dependent on Beta coming through, though. She and Aloy planned for this, and now it's her turn. Beta injects Hephaestus into the printers of the Zenith, and now he controls their productions. Hephaestus immediately starts pumping out his own machines. It's entirely unclear if he's on anyone's side or if he's against all, but his intervention on the field has saved their asses. The issue of containing Hephaestus will just have to be a problem for later. Sylens, Zoe, and Regala meet Aloy and Aaron at the entryway onto the base grounds. Spectres follow to block their path, which Regala claims as her prey. She was promised an honorable death in combat. This is where she will obtain it. Aloy honors their deal and leaves Regala to face her end. Before they can reach the launch station, the Zenith themselves emerge. Tilda's distractions have run their course, and it's hard to miss the gaggle of machines having a literal war on their front lawn. And, God, I can't help but see Gerard as a giant bald baby with tiny little legs and an oversized onesie. You made it this far into the video. Join me in mocking their weak eyebrows and thin lips, a bunch of bargain bin Lex Luthors that wear onesies so they can trap and treasure the stink of their own farts. They have time to permanently stop this, to rush the invaders and kill them with swift, merciless efficiency, but Gerard instead takes a moment to call them names because big, strong men show power by tearing others down, right? He knows this world is on a crash course with oblivion, yet he stops to say that he'll spare them if they give him Tilda. They know that Verbena was killed on this planet. Even if they don't know how, they should be able to put two and two together to see that there are lethal technologies here. But nope. Not a single active brain cell in all those heads. Sylens' shield weapon is activated, they all group right on up, and he tosses it into the middle. They all stand there staring as though danger is a foreign concept to them. The weapon goes off and their shields are destroyed. The machines of Hephaestus come in to say hello. Gerard and Eric are the only ones with the sense to leave the area. The rest of the Zenith are mauled. Beta and Gaia are now in critical danger. Gerard will certainly prep their shuttle for launch to return to the Odyssey. If that happens, there's no chance of getting them back. They'll all have to fight their way up through the field and into the station. Tilda departs to see if she can intercept Gerard before he's able to prep the shuttle, and the rest of them will approach directly on foot. Aloy is the only one that makes it through the field of mayhem. Her companions that still live will have to fight for survival without her. She has to make it to that shuttle, and they don't have time to regroup. Alva is desperately trying to get into the Zenith network in another part of the base, in hopes that she'll learn something about them that they can use against the Zenith. This launch station is massive. Reaching the top would take hours, if not for a still intact elevator. But someone is waiting for her. Eric. He's confident that he doesn't need a shield to kill. He has a suit that absorbs hits for him, weaponry that is unmatched, and he can literally fly. But he's a sloppy poor fighter. He doesn't act defensively when his headgear is destroyed. He stays in one spot to lob mini bombs. He doesn't track her down when she hides in the dark. He is downed in less than 2 minutes. The killing blow belongs to Zoe, however. She runs him through like he did to Varl and taunts him at his final breath. Varl was loved, admired, and died protecting something that he valued. This man died beaten, alone, and devoid of anything good. It's what he deserved. Zoe will remain behind to regroup with the others. What lies ahead is for Aloy. The lift gets her part of the way up before Gerard takes control of everything and shuts the elevators down. He's activated a self-destruct on the printers, so soon they won't have an army. The Spectres are almost wiped out, so perhaps that's for the best anyways. While climbing, Alva gets a hold of Aloy. She has found some spicy intel. The Zenith weren't planning on staying here, and there's mention of something troubling called Nemesis, which even the Zenith were afraid of. Communications are shut down before she can say anything more, but it's enough that maybe Beta can help her piece things together. Now called her sister by the others as well, Aloy finds Beta still trapped in a chair, trapped in a simulation akin to torture. Once she's out, there's no time to rest or get collected. Beta needs to find information about Nemesis immediately. Gerard took down systems all around the base, which means there's nothing to prevent her from accessing local files. Beta quickly finds information related to the word, and oh boy, are they in for some surprises. There's something in deep space following the Zenith, coming towards Earth. The energy readings of it are unlike anything they've ever seen. Something like this would destroy anything it touches. Beta pieces together that this is what destroyed Sirius. The Zenith were never going to stay here. This was a resupply, a way station to pick up Gaia and her subordinate functions. Liars and thieves, all of them. Speaking of which, Tilda and Gerard are here. Well, Gerard temporarily. He's quickly shot in the back, a death no one will grieve, and Tilda knows that she's been found out. So there's no point in keeping up the facade. She spills it. Nemesis is a creation of Far Zenith, one of their attempts at digital transcendence that they threw into a data storage system and just forgot about. Nemesis became self-aware, was tormented by the dark thoughts, memories, emotions of its psychotic creators, and became consumed with hatred. Because it was made up of the memories of the Zenith, it knew precisely how to get past every lock, through every door. It knew them better than they knew themselves, and it tortured them with it. Nemesis knew that they were going to come to Earth, so it sent the extinction signal to Hades to deny them safe harbor. The Zenith intended to take Gaia and flee to a random planet circling a random star in hopes that the Nemesis would never find them in the vast nothingness of space. And that plan still stands. Tilda intends to take it all, and Aloy. She ignores Beta as she speaks. She only addresses Aloy. She intends to take her back to the Odyssey so they can find a new planet to create in their own image. She views Aloy as Elizabeth remade, a second chance to save the life of a woman she loved that died 1,000 years ago. Beta, she says, is an inferior copy, and if Aloy won't submit, then she'll force her onto that ship. It might take a few centuries, but she'll get over it eventually. Tilda uses the body of a specter as armor, choosing violence as a way to gain control. She was prepared for this well in advance. She'll break every non-vital bone in Aloy's body if it means getting her onto the Odyssey and away from Earth. Had she not given in to her base fears, greed, or need for control, she may have found other ways. She may have found a purpose here that brought her into the service of others, but no. Tilda Vandermeer failed to prove herself as anything other than a Far Zenith. Aloy destroys the suit she's in, resulting in her death. But Nemesis. This was unexpected. When Sylens spoke of the end of the world, he wasn't talking about the Zenith. He has left the group behind to meet her here, to have a private conversation. He confirms information about Nemesis and lays out that his every move was so that he could be here at this exact moment. He just wasn't counting on her being present too. He never let her in on what was happening because she has a history of impulsive decision-making and a staunch moral superiority complex. He couldn't see a way forward that involved her being informed, and though she did interfere with his original plans, in the end, the result was the same. He intends to leave Earth via the Odyssey, to journey into the stars with just Apollo, so he can pursue unending knowledge. And he doesn't mean it in a nefarious way, he just wants to go. This world is doomed. Why would he stay here to die with people that he really doesn't care about? He does invite Aloy to join him, though. She's earned a spot if she'd like it. But of course, she declines. She asks him to stay, to fight. Sylens sees no hope for this planet. Nemesis destroyed a highly advanced civilization in just a few hours. Earth is doomed. If she came along and brought Gaia, then life could try again someplace new. He believes that Elizabeth Sobek would agree. Saving the seed for a new planet was what Zero Dawn was. Accepting the inevitable. But still she declines. She's not leaving her home behind. Her family and her life are here. Things that Sylens has never had. And for as hard-headed and ruthless as he is, even Sylens has a hard time walking away from that. He's leaving behind people that he has come to know. And if he does leave, then he'll never know if defeating Nemesis was possible. So, yeah, he'll stay, at least for a while. These people are going to need all the help they can get. This victory can hardly even be called a temporary reprieve. Some cosmic horror is en route to this place, an all-consuming hatred. She will have to tell her companions about it very soon. They'll have to start searching for answers, ways to stop it. They've ended one great threat and traded it for another. No time is wasted. Each of the companions journeys back to their homelands to spread word of the coming threat and to request aid. All will be needed for this. The Tenakth, the Utaru, the Oseram, the Karja, the Nora, all will be called upon. The Quen, too, will carry this message back to their homeland across the seas to unite and prepare for the Nemesis. Gaia is returned to where she belongs, missing only Hephaestus and Hades in her subordinate functions. Even Apollo will be restored eventually. Beta will continue to work with Gaia to restore her, stabilize the biosphere, and research how they can prepare for the inevitable. Even Sylens will work in pursuit of that salvation. During his studies, he discovers something troubling. There were 13 Zenith. They only counted 12 corpses. There is still one on the loose. Walter Londra. Londra made his fortunes mining near-Earth asteroids for rare metals. His background in aerospace engineering could spell trouble for them. Wherever Londra is now, he's lost access to the Zenith base shuttle and the Odyssey is orbiting the Earth. He'll want to get off Earth. He'll want to take the Odyssey. They'll need to stop that from happening. But if they could get him onto their side, he might know of a way to stop Nemesis. Or maybe they could break his kneecaps and get that information out of him. Londra was married to a famous actress, which made him a celebrity as well. They were a real blessing to the tabloids. Joined at the hip, wildly successful, both beautiful people. Strange that she didn't go onto the Odyssey with him if they were so in love. Sylens recommends Aloy starts her journey to the south, at a place called the Burning Shores, Los Angeles. Londra had a company based there called Heaven Sent. It makes sense that that's where he would run off to. Aloy doesn't vanish into the night like she has so many times before. Her team is made aware of her journey, and they all wish her well. She'll keep in contact as needed as she goes. The flight down to the Burning Shores is serene. The area is plagued by earthquakes and volcanoes, but from the sky it seems like nigh paradise. At least, until she's in the city and some wild defense system activates and shoots her ass down. By the hair of her nose, she is able to avoid becoming an Aloy pancake. A young gal named Seika watches the whole thing go down, and is astonished that this woman falling from the sky was actually flying on a machine. Seika is wearing an armor that looks like the Quen, but they don't have the time to make each other's acquaintance properly. There's a gaggle of hostile machines in the area looking for a fight. The only Quen that Aloy has ever seen were up near San Francisco. Why would a Quen diviner be all the way down in LA without an armed escort? She's perfectly capable in combat, but it didn't seem like the diviners did many solo missions. Once they have a minute, the only question Seika asks is, "Why are you here?" Aloy doesn't yet have any real reason to withhold information. In fact, the locals might be able to help her out. She points to where she was headed, and Seika knows it. Starlight Rise. Aloy needs to reach the hill. Seika's people need that tower dealt with. This is a mutually beneficial teaming up. Seika takes Aloy to the camp, and there's almost immediately internal troubles presenting themselves. Seika is not a diviner. She stole her focus. and she is on the bad side of leadership here, to the point of being unwelcome amongst them. The one chastising and attempting to have her arrested is a goddamn compliance officer. Also seems like the sort that makes a mile out of an inch of power. Seika's able to dodge his arrest by demanding to speak with the admiral of this camp, the one who should really be handling whatever problem is here anyways. The focus that Seika took was that of a dead diviner named Vi. She's been looking for missing Quen and breaking rules to do it. His last moments reveal a clue that their people were on Starlight Rise, and this barbarian can help her take down the tower, keeping them all away. The Admiral does acknowledge that Seika's actions are concerning. She has overstepped her bounds and defied leadership, but none of that is as important as the lives of their crew. He will, for now, allow their plan to move forward. Before they head out, he would like a private word with Aloy, though. Seika discloses that of the missing crew members, one is her sister and the last navigator of this group. She's the only one that can get them back home at this point, a navigator that can find their way without any equipment just by looking at the stars. She is one of the most precious assets in the fleet. Every group that has gone out to search has been lost. They never came back, but it has something to do with Starlight Rise. Aloy lets Seika know about the other Quen up near San Francisco. Part of their fleet did make it to land farther up the coast, which is wonderful news. They decide that they won't share that yet. If the Admiral knows about the other Quen, they may abandon the crew here in favor of going north. For now, they'll keep this to themselves. The Admiral is an intense older man. He wants to know where Aloy came from. The Quen here have been through a lot. They're struggling out here, and he doesn't want any more problems. He impresses upon Aloy the importance of not getting Seika into deeper trouble. He's rooting for them. He wants them to win, but Seika needs to reel in her rebellion. Aloy can help out other Quen in the settlement before taking off for the tower. One spicy mission in particular sees a very irritating compliance officer dethroned, shall we say. But all roads lead to that tower. There's a probably insane Zenith genius on the loose doing God knows what. Aloy keeps details close to the chest, though. Explaining what the Zenith are could be complicated and confusing, probably terrifying too. And then there's the whole, end of the world thing. And this chick is kind of a stranger, so she's not too forthcoming with details on what she wants at Starlight Rise. As they start to climb that tower, Aloy does ease up a bit and explains that Walter Londra is a living ancestor, centuries old. She even opens up about being an outcast growing up. She really doesn't belong to any one specific tribe, and Seika relates to that feeling of not belonging, of feeling not wanted by your own. But Seika isn't the type to abandon ship when things get tough. This defense system is Zenith tech, which means Londra set it up. Her override is able to turn it off, but it comes with a very special recording from Walter himself. He knows who she is. He set this all up specifically for her. He knows that she will be on his trail, and he's not the type to submit or be passive. He is very paranoid, in fact. This defensive weapon is also offensive. The two of them have to bob and weave around a mini light show of plasma lasers and rockets, with one acting as a distraction while the other climbs up and chips away at it. Walter Londra is going to be playing dirty, so scratch out the whole maybe he'll help us idea, but bump up the breaking kneecaps option. With this tower destroyed, Aloy can operate vehicles again safely. It puts Starlight Rise well within reach. Seika needs to quickly report back to the Admiral, to be responsible, to communicate, to keep in his good graces. After they talk, she does still seem to have his blessings to continue, so the two of them depart for the hills. And what's better for getting around quickly than a sunwing? The two of them mount up and soar through the skies together. Close to the hills, Seika spots some of the Quen scout boats that went missing. There's equipment left out in an abandoned construction site nearby, but why would the missing Quen be building out here? This operation clearly took a lot of effort, and there are ballistas set up all over the site. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Scaffolding takes them up the mountain, where a tunnel was dug out, leading into the ancient ruins of Heaven Sent, Londra's company headquarters. It's pretty decrepit, but something stands out amongst the rubble. It looks like an engine. Data archives reveal that this thing is a prototype engine for a nuclear thermal rocket that, if used, would create enough fallout to poison a 1,000-mile radius. This thing was very intentionally dug out and data on it retrieved. Further into the tunnels, they find Quen corpses, people obviously overworked, crushed to death from a worksite accident and just left here. Deeper into the complex, they find Walter's personal room and a recent log entry. He is speaking to his personal AI called Nova, who expresses disappointment that they're going to be using a certain program, which Walter chastises and orders her to reduce her empathy matrix. But the Zenith himself is nowhere to be found. A transmitter outside kept records of his data transmissions. They were sent west of Heaven Sent. Seika demands to know what exactly it was that they found in there and why the bodies of her people were in that tunnel. Aloy theorizes that Walter is trying to build a ship to get off-world, and if he's planning on using the design of that rocket engine they found, then everything within a 1,000-mile radius is going to be nuked, all so one little man can save his own hide. But why would somebody want to leave Earth? Why would he be so desperate that he would kill the Quen to do it? Should Aloy spill information about Nemesis, it would be another distraction for her and her people whilst they're attempting to save lives, and a quickly approaching doomsday isn't really a light topic. It would be hard to break that news to a new friend. Seika spits some venom over her keeping secrets, but Aloy says that Seika reacted to a mural in that ruins. She's keeping her own secrets. They stalemate each other in frustration and decide to just drop it. Seika is going to report back to her admiral. Aloy will meet her once she is ready to continue on. There are some amongst the Quen who wish for Seika to be cast out of the tribe for her rebellion and behavior. There's a lot of stress and fear amongst the tribe right now. They're unwilling to let a headstrong young woman break and bend rules just to get her way, especially if her tactics bring trouble back on all of them. The two of them take off via the water this time, to the sunny hills of Hollywood, where a Horus Titan shell resides. There are massive cords lying on the hill going up to the Titan, like it's plugged into something. There's a device on the hillside that shows them a map of what's inside it, underneath the Horus. There is an entire compound under the Hollywood sign. Imagine the cost of that real estate 1,000 years ago. Further concerning is Londra has put power generators onto some of the arms of the Horus. They're powering a barrier around the hill entrances to keep people out. Londra is hiding something here. They'll need to destroy them if they want to get inside. And the generators on the Horus are massive. It's a wonder how Londra managed to get them connected. That also makes them easy targets, and Aloy's override supersedes anything that Walter might have, thanks to good old Ted Faro for that one. And calling what's inside the mountain a compound is fitting on a cult level. Quen are happily waiting outside a door, and one greets Seika, asking if she has come to join them. Another of them says that some dude named Szeth wouldn't allow this because Aloy is an outsider. She's able to spin some story about helping Szeth out in the wilds during an ambush, so he sent them along ahead of him to be allowed in. It's a pretty damn good lie that Seika adds on to. It's very convincing. Rather than risking this Szeth's anger, the guards go along with it. But the more feisty of the two, the man, won't allow them into something called the Ascension Hall until they prove their devotion? Unfortunately, their lie puts them on a time limit. They need to figure out what's happening here before some guy named Szeth shows up. A hologram of Walter acts as the door greeter. Some nonsense about welcoming wanderers who have suffered but are lost no more because he has found them and they deserve ascension. And then, God, this entire hall hurts me deep in my soul. There are massive pictures of himself all over the place, like Instagram made a grand return in the year 3041. Oh, the laziest form of self-promo, the selfie. Walter Londra and headshots on every wall, and it's actually working. The Quen here have been treated well. They've been eating delicious foods as much as they can stomach, they're warm and safe, looking at strange pictures of a foreign world, and hearing the sermons of a man that seems more deity than human. He spins his life story as though he has suffered the greatest of losses and heartache, and that the destruction of the world broke him as a man, and that he's been so lonely, yet he rose above the pain to gain immortality so that he could be here with these people here today. He will deliver them from their hard lives, take them to a new world amongst the stars, and they'll start over new lives together. It's made clear that they need to get into that Ascension Hall. Something is in there, and they need to see what it is to understand Walter's plan. But they have to prove their devotion. They have to know special words that only the worthy know. The words of attainment. Leaving the compound to search for these words of attainment would take far too long. But luckily, not everyone here has bought into Londra's promises. Some have seen through his obvious manipulations, and they're very uncomfortable with the situation they found themselves in. One man in particular, named Utaru, is opposed to all of this. He's afraid of what this Laundra man is going to do. He reminds Utaru of the empire that he came from. Leaders would promise one thing and deliver pain instead, under the protection of imperial decrees. Walter is just like the Imperials of his homeland. Aloy convinces him that they're here to stop whatever he's planning. Laundra is going to inflict harm on this world somehow, destroy innocent lives. Utaru decides to be brave, risk his own safety, and gives them the words of attainment, in hopes that these strangers will deliver his people from the clutches of a madman. With these words, the door guard can't deny them entry as much as he wants to. So, what's in this Hall of Ascension that is so wondrous? Well, it's the shuttle that Walter Laundra is going to use to leave Earth. He's been utilizing the Horus Titan printer to reprint a Zenith shuttle, and attached to it is the nuclear thermal rocket engine. That prototype, with inadequate radiation shielding. It's a dark confirmation that he is going to poison everything within a 1,000-mile radius. Furthermore, there's not nearly enough space on this thing for his followers. It could only take a few. Aloy explains it to Seika in ways that she'll understand, and she questions again why Laundra would want to leave in the first place, which would mean explaining Nemesis, so Aloy falters to that question. Seika lashes out again at the obvious concealing of information, yet before they can hash out the issue, Szeth walks in with backup and his own personal Zenith weaponry. Seems just the type to act as a tyrant's attack dog. It's unfortunate that Quen's soldiers die at his command. They were hopeful of and believed in better lives here. It's something they were willing to die for. Szeth, however, is a real piece of work. Once downed, he reveals where Walter Laundra has been taking those deemed devoted, to a well-defended park to the south. None of the Quen remaining here were chosen by Laundra to ascend into the stars. They have been abandoned here, lied to. This revelation is difficult to hear. That door guard, who was so opposed to them gaining entrance, is horrified by it. He will take this news and spread it amongst the Quen. Meanwhile, Seika demands the truth of Laundra's intentions from Aloy, so, in detail, she spells it out. She tells her of Nemesis, of the coming destruction of this world from deep space. Laundra wants to build this ship so that he can escape it, and he intends to take a choice group of followers, and amongst them is Seika's sister. It's just as crushing and confusing as Aloy suspected it would be. Entire worlds are being flipped upside down with this. Seika sadly concedes that she needs to report back to the Admiral, tell him some of what they found in the compound. When ready, they'll meet up in the southeast to infiltrate this park Laundra is using. Outside the Ascension Hall, the Quen are struggling to come to terms with the truth. Some even blame Aloy for it. Returning to the tribe is something they must do on their own. Neither Aloy nor Seika can force them to go home. It may take some time, but at least they're still alive, right? Aloy and Seika reconvene on a beach nearby their next objective and talk for a bit. Seika's having trouble processing Nemesis, and she discloses to Aloy that the murals that they saw painted were in her sister's art style. She's with Laundra willingly. Seika's not sure if she was trying to hide that from Aloy or from herself. Her sister is gone, some within her tribe want her cast out, and now the world itself is going to end, so what's the point in all of it? Aloy has experienced this line of thinking probably 100 times over with the Nora. Even if they feel like outcasts, their tribes are a part of who they are, and they are lives worth fighting for. The point of it is hope. And it takes a special spirit within a warrior to keep that fight going, one that Seika certainly has, even if things seem too dark to continue. Then, awkward pulling up and oh ha ha, we fell into each other's arms, whoops, laugh with me, Yuna, ha! No time for young romance, though. There is a Zenith just across the water that needs his kneecaps broken in and teeth extracted the slow way. Who knows what he's done to fortify the park he's in now. If they go by air or water, the defense tower will shoot them down. So they'll have to go in by air and water, via a water wing. It can fly and dive. They'll have to bounce between the two to avoid taking hits. Smart thinking. Beta preps an override code for a water wing as Aloy collects data that they'll need to complete it. And in no time at all, Aloy has herself a very cool new water and air mount. Hopefully the impact on the water when it dives doesn't break something, like all of her important bones. Both Seika and Aloy hold on for dear life as the wild ride begins towards the park. They can see the long-range launches of weaponry from the tower as they go, but as they draw in, their reaction time becomes more limited. Everything goes smooth until they're near the beach, when they take a direct hit from the defense system. Don't worry, the water wing is okay. Oh, and so are Seika and Aloy, of course. There are Quen guards all over the grounds and shields that slow their travel. It forces them to find ways around and to sneak as much as possible. And this park is actually cool as hell. It was once a site of a dinosaur-themed hologram amusement park owned by Walter and his wife, the famous actress Evelyn Day. Seemed like the two were lovebirds, but Walter was a bit obsessed over Evelyn remaining loyal to him. So he sent his best friend / bodyguard Jack to spy on her whenever she was working. But Jack and Evelyn ended up having a bit of an affair, which Walter found out about. The divorce was vicious, and when it was time to abandon Earth on the Odyssey, Walter left her behind. Jack didn't stick around with her either. The whole situation is pretty ick. Sounds like they all really deserved each other. Aloy and Seika are pretty confused by the concept of an amusement park. It seems complicated and an odd form of entertainment. Why did the old ones like fleshy dinosaurs so much? But when it comes time for trivia and some games, even they can't deny that it's pretty great. Within an inner courtyard, guards are communicating confirmations to kill all intruders on site. The security here is extremely high, because rehearsals for tryouts to be Walter Londra's next wife are taking place. And one of the hopefuls is Seika's sister, Kina. She and another girl are rehearsing lines from one of Walter's former wife's movies. Londra wants someone to replace Evelyn at his side, someone young that he can mold into what Evelyn used to be. Thus far, Kina seems to be a standout actress amongst the potentials. She's telling her rehearsal partner to forget about their ancestors, their past, even their family. Only think of Walter. And if you weren't on team break Walter's kneecaps before, how about now? They can't just run to Kina and forcefully save her. That would incite a fight, and they don't want to risk the girls getting caught in the middle of it. Seika and Aloy wait until the girls are taken away, and then they stealth kill their way through the park. They lift the park keys off some jackass named Fetter, break their way into Londra's main compound through the armory, and start fingering through all of his dirty secrets. They have been collecting Quen DNA samples for him to take on the Odyssey. He's been brainwashing people Outlast whistleblower / MK Ultra style in the infirmary, and the only thing that's been barely able to tolerate Walter all these years is that AI, Nova. But even Nova is ready to dunk on Londra. Poor Nova longs for rest. Walter is constantly changing her behavior matrix to satisfy his whims, a process that is like torture for Nova. After 1,000 years at his side, she will do anything to be freed from him. She tells Aloy everything Walter is planning with the Quen. He'll take only a few with him. They will form a new family around him to act as rulers over a new planet, with him being like the patriarchal deity. All the Quen guards that eagerly attacked them did so because of Walter's brainwashing tactics. And on this new planet he wishes to establish, he'll do the same thing to the populace. It will allow him complete control over all of them. No one will ever betray him again and sleep with his wife. The girls like Kina haven't undergone brainwashing yet. They can still be saved if they hurry. Nova will get them direct access to Walter if they agree to purge her source code using the Omega Override. It's something that she is absolutely sure of. She just wants to cease. A simple agreement from Aloy, and Nova unlocks the doors to Walter, just like that. Aloy gives Nova the rest she has so desired, and they turn their attention to where Walter has locked himself away, inside the volcano attraction. Tryouts for position of wife are underway, and Kina is the clear favorite. She is eating up his attention and flatters him at every opportunity. It's extremely gross, and Seika can't contain herself anymore. She rushes the creep before he touches her sister and demands that this stop. Walter's clearly surprised, but not fazed. The betrayal of Nova does tilt him a bit, though. He's completely unapologetic about his wants and expectations. He is a man apart from the other Zenith, and two angry women with sticks aren't going to stop him. He calls in a slaughter spine to fight for him, which immediately kills one of the girls auditioning to be his next wife, and he just flies out of the park. Kina's rose-tinted glasses have snapped in half. She's terrified of who this man really is. Aloy and Seika bring down the slaughter spine, but this is far from the finale. Seika is going to get her sister back to the Quen, tell the Admiral of what has happened here, and then they'll both meet up at Londra's bunker. Aloy knows that he is planning something big. She's going to need help. The Quen tribe will go to the amusement park to help the survivors return to where they belong. Kina, too, will help in the process of undoing what Walter did to them. Seika and Aloy return to Londra's compound in the Hollywood Hills, and it becomes pretty damn clear that he's not actually in the bunker. The Horus is being brought back online. He's going to use the Horus to squash the Quen, collect what he needs for his journey on the Odyssey, and then turn the West Coast into a wasteland when his shuttle launches. The cord feeding into the Horus is its cooling system. Water is being pumped into it to prevent overheating, but if they can cut off the water, then it could shut down the Titan. He's already using the printers within it to create machines to defend the hills. The longer this takes, the stronger he'll be. Walter catches on to their presence. He uses the appendages of the Horus to scan and scout the hills, and he's just so damned creepy about it too. They have to destroy machines, stealth through the fields, hide from the all-seeing eye of Londra, and ever so slowly make it up to the cooling systems connected to the Horus. They do get it shut down, and within seconds, overheating warnings start to sound from the Horus. Londra has created heat sink backups to disperse the heat within it, but this is a temporary solution at best. He gets the Titan up and moving, goes in for an attack, but has to acknowledge that if he wants this Horus to function, he has to leave these two here and get it into a water source. Walter starts maneuvering the Horus towards the ocean. Seika provides an aerial distraction while Aloy goes in from the ground to destroy the Horus heat sinks. Watching this thing move is terrifying. Its size is unlike anything else. What might seem slow and lumbering is actually devastating speed to anyone caught on the ground near it. It's down the hillside and to the ocean in just a few minutes. Her two advantages are Seika as the distraction and her own size. She can hide from it, see its missiles coming from a distance, and the heat sinks are so large that she can shoot them from the ground. By the time it's reached water deep enough to put its body into, the Horus is molten in some spots. Walter puts enough of the Titan into the water to start the cooling process and turns the upper body towards Aloy. There are still heat sinks that she can destroy to overheat the arms and the torso. Walter's self-assuredness at being able to crush her will backfire if she can destroy them. It is a gnarly fight from all directions that requires she stays mobile just to attack the arms of the beast. Eventually, the primary heat sink is exposed in its chest. It's her final target. Aloy blows out the heatsink, ripping a hole into the hull of the Titan. Londra doesn't give up though. He turns the Horus around towards open water and takes it in. So long as it stays cool, it will function. He can repair and try again. Aloy follows him into the depths, literally swimming after the Horus to find that hole in the hull. If she can get in, she can get directly to Londra in the control room. She'll have to remember to send a special thanks to Moreland for this diving mask. She makes it to the Horus before it gets too deep. Aloy finds him, directly hooked up to the processing orb. It makes him vulnerable to approach. He's already taking the Horus back to the coast. Repairs are underway and he can attack from the water if need be. Being connected to the Horus doesn't make Walter unaware of his surroundings though. As soon as she's in the control room, Walter turns his attention towards her. He uses every resource and defense in the room against her while she shoots at the connectors feeding into the shield around the processing orb. If she can break that shield and destroy the orb, then it is game over for Londra. He knows that this is his last stand. He does everything he can to try to stop her, but it's just not enough. Aloy destroys the shield and brings down the processing orb, and she doesn't disconnect Walter from it. She jams her override into it, destroying the orb and presumably scrambles Walter's insides. His final words are flaccid and befitting. The last of the Zenith is dead. Seika rides in for a just-in-time pickup. The Horus is going down fast. This thing should never have been given life again. Its new gravesite will be on this beach, a monument to the failure of Walter Londra. What a story to take back to the Quen. Imagine the Admiral's reaction. Seika heads back to her people to tell them about the Metal Devil and their victory here. When alone, Aloy gives Sylens a call. Good to see that the two of them aren't at each other's throats, for now. He's actually engaged in what she's saying, interested in what she has done. She sends him the data that she scanned off of Walter's neural implant. Just the sort of thing that Sylens enjoys, going through people's personal logs. He promises to keep her up to date on everything that he finds. She takes a victory flight around the Horus. For as awful as that fight was, the aftermath looks pretty badass. She'll need to be going back east to the base soon, so she drops in to talk with Seika and the Admiral. The old man actually has a smile on his face. He's excited to recount what they saw on the beach, and the return of the lost Quen has brought life back to the camp. But soon, there will be even more to celebrate. Aloy introduces Seika to Alva. The Quen up near San Francisco are thrilled to know that some of the fleet made it to land. The two of them are going to coordinate a reunion so the Quen can be made whole again. Aloy can finish up socializing with and helping out the Quen before going, but Seika asks for a private conversation before she does. Seika feels disconnected from her people after all of this, and she knows that her relationship with her sister has changed. Her future is uncertain, though she knows that she does want to see her homeland again one day. In the time that she's spent with Aloy, she's felt understood, accepted, and encouraged. All the while, her own people were actively rejecting her. Seika has developed strong feelings for Aloy and hopes that she feels the same way. Maybe Seika's home could be here instead of with her sister and her people. And this is a choice that's not easy to make. Aloy has developed a bond with this kindred spirit, yet they are of two different worlds. It's impossible to know what the right thing to do is, but in this case, Aloy takes a step back. While she may adore Seika, her biggest fight is yet to come. Her life has been one enemy after another for 2 years straight, and she's not going to commit to anything. She gently continues to encourage Seika, reminds her of all the things that make her absolutely wonderful, inspiring, and strong. Her people need that strength. Her sister will need her most of all. This is a goodbye for now, but hopefully not forever. Sylens needs to speak with her. He calls and asks for her to return east, to speak with him at the base. It is important. Laundra kept logs about ways that Nemesis might be countered, not by ultra-advanced Zenith technologies, but by 21st century creations. Sylens has mapped out corporations that manufactured state-of-the-art weaponry 1,000 years ago. He's almost excited when putting together his list of things that they'll need to do. Investigate each company, locate them, explore their facilities, learn about their technology. Aloy knows why Sylens decided to stay on Earth. He likes a challenge. He is happiest when facing impossible odds. He likes being the smartest man in the room, but he doesn't admit it. He just says that his reasons are his own, and she throws that back at him. That's why he'll always be alone. He does stop and extends acknowledgement of and thanks for her many deeds. It's, oh my God, Sylens is saying thank you. He may be the smartest man in the room, but he knows his limits. He's grateful for all of them. This olive branch brings a smile to her face. After all, this is a lesson that she's had to learn too. This is not the end. It's far from it. As her companions spread the news of Nemesis amongst the tribes of these lands, she will begin her next great search. Their next foe will be at their doorstep soon. A grand cosmic danger. Gaia is still not whole, and what of Hephaestus? What will the mighty Cauldron Master do when made aware that another AI is approaching that will destroy his creations? Can he be bargained with, reasoned with? All must unite, or they're doomed. The next great threat will be the rampaging Nemesis.